Chapter 2369. To Bailey Hongzhuang, this was not a problem for her. Her experience in pill refinement was extremely rich and her mental energy was extremely powerful. Hence, it was not difficult for her to refine the pill at the same time. Of course, one of the reasons for this was that the pill refined from the black snake blood ginseng was not of a very high grade. The reason why it had been refined into a pill was to add in some other herbs to maximize its medicinal properties. Furthermore, the medicinal properties were more gentle so that the cultivator would not feel too much pain when absorbing it. Time slowly passed, and the crowd watched as Bailey Hongzhuang concentrated on refining the pill. She was not distracted at all. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang in this state, the crowd sighed in admiration. No matter what the young palace lord was doing, she was always so focused. It was admirable. The process of refining the pill was not short. The cultivators in the group took turns to keep watch nearby. It was a good thing that no one else appeared. Gradually, a medicinal fragrance wafted from Bailey Hongzhuang's pill furnace. Smelling this medicinal fragrance, the crowd's eyes lit up with joy. The pill was about to be refined. Bailey Hongzhuang, who had maintained a calm expression, slowly curled the corners of her lips into a smile. Even though she had not refined pills for some time, her pill refinement skills had long been deeply ingrained in her mind. As long as this pill was refined successfully, everyone would need to spend another 2 days to absorb it. Then, everyone's physical strength would increase. If they were lucky, they might even be able to take advantage of this opportunity to increase their powers. Now, they were a team. Regardless of who in the group, the increase in their powers would increase the power of the entire group. Leader, there's a medicinal fragrance coming from the front. In the distance, a woman's sharp senses picked up the faint medicinal fragrance in the air. Hearing this woman's words, the cultivators in the group could not help but look puzzled. Who would be refining pills in the middle of the battle for the deer? It was already too late for them to search for treasures and snatch identity tokens. Refining pills was a very taxing task. Furthermore, they had to be on guard against any sneak attacks. Choosing to refine pills in the middle of the battle for the deer, was there something wrong with their brains? However, this woman was very certain. I can guarantee that my judgment is absolutely not wrong. Someone must be concocting a pill, and the grade of this pill is not low. When the leader of the group saw the woman's solemn expression, his expression changed a little. Can you tell what kind of pill the other party is concocting? Since the other party chose to refine the pill in such an environment, I'm sure this pill will be of great use to the entire team. Let me judge. The woman closed her eyes and carefully sniffed the medicinal fragrance in the air, trying to determine the ingredients from the smell. A moment later, the woman opened her eyes. Her eyes were brighter than before. Captain, I'm unable to determine what kind of medicinal pill this is, but I'm certain that this medicinal pill contains an extremely precious medicinal ingredient. Black snake blood ginseng. As the woman's voice fell, the expressions of all the cultivators in the group changed. Originally, they didn't take this matter to heart at all. They just thought that with the appearance of team, they could go and snatch the identity cards again. Chapter 2370. The black snake blood ginseng was a huge treasure to cultivators. No matter what kind of pill the other party was refining, as long as there was the black snake blood ginseng, they could guess the effect of the pill. Are you sure? The leader looked at the woman who spoke. The black snake blood ginseng was a treasure with a high value. Even in the Battle of Zhuolu, it was hard to imagine that it would appear. Could it be that the other party had obtained the black snake blood ginseng here? Leader, I'm sure. The woman nodded. The other party's pill is about to be refined successfully. If we go over now, not only can we snatch the identity token, we can also snatch the pill. When she said that, everyone's face was filled with excitement. If they could snatch the pill, wouldn't their strength increase by a few points? The leader's face also revealed a smile. Since that's the case, what are we waiting for? As Bailey Hongzhuang's pill gradually took shape, the medicinal fragrance became stronger and stronger. Ding! Finally, following a crisp sound, Bailey Hongzhuang knocked on the lid of the furnace. The lid flew up into the air. Bailey Hongzhuang then took out a white porcelain bottle and poured all the pills into it. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the pills in the white porcelain bottle. There were a total of 10 pills, not one more, not one less. Young Palace Master, you've successfully refined the pill. Yin Aoshuang walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side and congratulated her happily. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Our luck is not bad. There are exactly 10 pills. Let's absorb them later. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the disciples of Limitless Palace all revealed a happy smile. It was great that they followed the young Palace Master out. They had reaped a lot of rewards along the way. Now they were only glad that the young Palace Master had come with them. Otherwise, the situation would have been much worse. The Palace Master had found such a powerful successor. As disciples of Limitless Palace, they felt proud. However, just as everyone was immersed in joy, Bailey Hongzhuang's ears twitched. The joy on her face disappeared and was replaced by a solemn expression. It seems that an uninvited guest has come. Hearing this, Long Xianjing and the others began to observe their surroundings. If someone were to suddenly approach them at this time, it was very likely that they were here for their pills. The appearance of the other party at this time undoubtedly made everyone very unhappy. Bailey Hongzhuang kept the pill into her primordial chaos ring. Fortunately, the other party only appeared after she finished concocting the pill. Otherwise, this black snake blood ginseng would have gone to waste. The other party's movements were extremely small, but after Bailey Hongzhuang's reminder, Long Xianjing and the others quickly determined the situation. Since you're already here, there's no need to hide. Just come out. Bailey Hongzhuang said coldly. She looked at the trees in the distance with certainty. Even if the other party's ability to hide was not bad, her judgment was not weak either. She had already determined the other party's position. When the other party saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had already discovered him, he no longer hid and walked out of the forest. I was wondering which team was refining pills here. So it's Limitless Palace. Chapter 2371. As the woman's voice fell, the cultivators behind her began to laugh, as if the actions of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were unwise. The moment Bailey Hongzhuang saw the woman in front of her, her face instantly turned gloomy. His eyes, which were as deep as a pool, flickered with a cold luster of hatred. It was terrifyingly deep and quiet. Under her sleeves, Bailey Hongzhuang's hands gradually clenched into fists. Her knuckles turned white and her veins popped out. It could be seen how powerful she was. This was the first time she saw the face in front of her. However, this face had appeared countless times in her dreams. This person was none other than her irreconcilable enemy, Lan Qingyan, this woman who destroyed her family and plundered everything that belonged to her. Now they finally met. When Long Xianjing and the rest heard Lan Qingyan's impolite ridicule, their faces were filled with anger. Although Limitless Palace had not been established for long, the strength that Limitless Palace had displayed was not something that could be ignored. Now, this person actually dared to use this to ridicule them. Wasn't this too much? I was wondering which team was so arrogant and condescending. So it's the famous Lan family. No wonder. Yin Aoshuang was not someone who would allow others to bully and humiliate her. Although the other party came from the famous Lan family, the disciples of Limitless Palace could not weaken the reputation of the sect. In fact, compared to the disciples of the sect, the aristocratic families were much more arrogant. Moreover, Lan Qingyan had been famous since young. Since young, she had always looked down on others. Regarding this point, they had long understood. As an expert and the next patriarch of the Lan family, this kind of arrogance was extremely normal. However, now that it had landed on the disciples of Limitless Palace, they would not back down so easily. After the cultivators of the Lan family heard Yin Aoshuang's words, their faces became gloomy. Compared to the ordinary families, their Lan family belonged to the ranks of the gifted. This was because the other families did not have the inheritance of the Rainbow Pearl. It was precisely because of this that their Lan family was one of the best, even among the aristocratic families. The other party was just a small sect that had just risen up. Moreover, when their Lan family expressed their goodwill to Limitless Palace, the Palace Master of Limitless Palace actually rejected them. This was undoubtedly a slap to their face. Not only that, after being rejected by Limitless Palace's Palace Master, before their Lan family could even express their anger, Limitless Palace's Palace Master directly expressed that he didn't like the Lan family. In the future, Limitless Palace wouldn't have any dealings with the Lan family. This was a blatant slap to the face. The Lan family had stood tall in the Shengxian continent for so many years. When had anyone dared to treat them like this? Most people were busy hugging the Lan family's thighs, but this Limitless Palace actually dared to take the initiative to provoke them. Therefore, this enmity had been formed long ago. Now that they had met a disciple from Limitless Palace in this deer-chasing battle, they naturally wouldn't let the other party off so easily. Long Xianjing and the others naturally knew all of this, although they didn't have any enmity with the Lan clan, because they were disciples of the Limitless Palace. This enmity was unavoidable. Chapter 2372. With these words, Yin Aoshuang and the rest became even more furious. Extermination. The other party actually mentioned extermination the moment he opened his mouth. This was completely looking down on their sect to the extreme. If cultivators from other powers met, even if they would attack, their words wouldn't be so vicious. At this moment, the Lan family and Limitless Palace's cultivators met. It could be said that when enemies meet, their eyes would turn red. At that time, I don't know which family wanted to be on good terms with our Limitless Palace, but our Palace Lord didn't want to pay attention to them. Now that they're angry out of humiliation, could it be that they want to refute the truth? Long Xuanjing's words were also extremely impolite. He had always respected the Palace Lord. If not for the Palace Lord and his wife being so good to them, their strength wouldn't have improved so much. Now that they were out of the sect, everything they did represented the sect. They absolutely couldn't be weak. The Lan family's cultivators' faces were gloomy. This matter was the Lan family's humiliation. Normally, they wouldn't be willing to mention it. Now, the main culprit actually dared to take the initiative to mention this matter. This was simply intolerable. Immediately, the Lan family's cultivators all looked at Lan Xingyan, waiting for her to express her opinion. Lan Xingyan's gaze landed on Bailey Hongzhuang. She didn't know why, but the moment she saw this woman, she felt that something was wrong. She didn't know where this feeling came from, but she felt uncomfortable all over, as if she had met her natural enemy. Not only that, Lan Xingyan felt that this woman in front of her was somewhat familiar, as if she had seen her somewhere before. However, after thinking about it carefully, Lan Xingyan dispelled this possibility. Limitless Palace hadn't been established for long. Their Lan family and Limitless Palace didn't have any contact, so it was impossible for her to have seen anyone from Limitless Palace. However, she could feel that the other party's gaze was extremely complicated. It seemed to be a kind of hatred. Just as Lan Xingyan was about to take a closer look, the other party's expression returned to normal, as if Lan Xingyan's eyes were playing tricks on her. In fact, Lan Xingyan had never carefully looked at Mu Lingbing. Ever since she was sensible, she knew that Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were imprisoned. However, she didn't care about it at all, nor did she have the slightest interest. For a person who had already become a prisoner, it was meaningless to spend more time on her. At the very least, she was too lazy to waste more time on such a person. In all these years, the number of times she had seen Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao could be counted on one hand, and every time she saw them, it was from afar. Moreover, Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao had been tortured for so many years that their hair was disheveled and their faces dirty. If one didn't look carefully, one wouldn't be able to see their faces clearly. In addition, Lan Xingyan didn't care about this at all, so when she saw this face that was extremely similar to Mu Lingbing's, she didn't recognize it at all. If it was Lan Xingyan's mother, Yuman Lan, who saw Bailey Hongzhuang, she would be stunned. Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang had shown her true face in the Battle of Zhuolu, Bailey Hongzhuang had not made any special preparations to conceal her identity. However, When she saw Lan Qingyin's unsurprised expression, Bailey Hongzhuang knew that Lan Qingyin did not recognize her. She didn't feel relieved about this. Instead, she felt that it was ironic. Chapter 2373. Even if she didn't understand, Lan Qingyin didn't like Bailey Hongzhuang in front of her. It was as if she was destined to be an enemy. The moment she saw Bailey Hongzhuang, she felt a sense of disgust. The reason why she, Lan Qingyin, was so famous in the cultivation world was because she was powerful and the owner of the Rainbow Pearl. On the other hand, it was because she was as beautiful as a flower. It could be said that she was both beautiful and powerful. Because of this, the number of men who chased after Lan Qingyin was countless. This also contributed to her arrogant personality. There were many outstanding young men in the world for her to choose from. However, Lan Qingyin's heart was higher than the sky. Before she met the person she truly liked, everyone else was just a plaything for her to use. However, this was the first time Lan Qingyin was defeated by someone in terms of appearance. Even if she didn't want to admit it, the appearance of the woman in front of her really made her jealous. If Yumanlan was here, she would discover that history was repeating itself. Thinking back, when Yumanlan married into the Lan family, she was also very well off. Whether it was status, appearance, or power, she was one in a million, making people envious. But ever since Mu Lingbing had arrived, everything had changed. Mu Lingbing's appearance completely crushed Yumanlan's. This made Yumanlan's heart feel extremely unbalanced. She was praised since she was young, but later on, everyone's attention fell on Mu Lingbing. Therefore, she wanted to destroy everything Mu Lingbing had. She wanted Mu Lingbing to become a prisoner. She wanted Mu Lingbing to see her, Yumanlan, take back all the glory that belonged to her. Who are you? Lan Qingyin looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a burning gaze. Her tone was condescending. She almost instinctively wanted to know Bailey Hongzhuang's identity. However, she also made a decision in her heart. She wouldn't let any woman who was more beautiful than her appear in this world. Later, she would send Bailey Hongzhuang to the Yellow Springs. Wuji Palace, Bailey Hongzhuang. When Bailey Hongzhuang said this sentence, her eyes were gloomy to the extreme. Since Lan Qingyin did not recognize her identity, she would hide for a while longer. When she appeared in the Lan family, she would clearly let everyone know that her real name was Lan Yishuan. Bailey Hongzhuang? Lan Qingyin muttered Bailey Hongzhuang's name, her smile full of ridicule and contempt. Never heard of it. You haven't heard of our young palace master's name. That's because you're ignorant. When Li Yongbing saw Lan Qingyin ridiculing Bailey Hongzhuang, he couldn't hold back the anger in his heart and immediately retorted. The current young palace lord's position in their hearts was no less than the palace lord's. How could they allow Lan Qingyin to humiliate him like this? Young palace master. After knowing Bailey Hongzhuang's identity, Lan Qingyin's expression turned serious. She looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with more respect. She only thought that Bailey Hongzhuang was an ordinary disciple of Wuji Palace. She didn't expect that she was the young palace master of Wuji Palace. Her identity was completely different. Previously, she had not heard any news about the young palace master of Wuji Palace. Even when Wuji Palace participated in the Battle of Zhuolu, the leader was only a disciple. Chapter 2374. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Lan Qingyin coldly. She and Lan Qingyin only had a simple interaction, but she already understood Lan Qingyin's arrogant and insolent personality. It seemed that the Lan family had spent all their resources on Lan Qingyin all these years, and it had contributed to Lan Qingyin's personality that made people unhappy. Coincidentally, looking at Lan Qingyin like this, she felt even more disgusted. Bailey Hongzhuang, right? Lan Qingyin sized up Bailey Hongzhuang with an insolent smile on her lips, as if she was treating Bailey Hongzhuang as a commodity. As long as you hand over your identity token, the medicinal pills that you just refined, and all the treasures that you obtained from the Battle of Zhuolu, kowtow and apologize to me, and commit suicide to atone for your sins, I will let the other cultivators in your team go. How about it? Her arrogant words were full of contempt, as if it was a reward from a superior to a subordinate, waiting for the other party to kowtow and express their gratitude. Once these words came out, the disciples of Limitless Palace only felt the veins on their foreheads bulging. They had lived for so long, but they had never seen such an arrogant person. They knew that death was a common occurrence in the Battle of Zhualu, but the other party wanted their young palace master's life. This was too much. For a moment, the disciples of Limitless Palace only felt anger surging up their chests. Their whole body was like a bomb that was ignited. This was unbearable. Lan Qingyan was completely humiliating them all. After hearing Lan Qingyan's words, the cultivators of the Lan family all revealed smiles. Their young palace master had such a temper, but they liked this kind of domineering attitude. Their Lan family's team was already an extremely powerful existence in the Battle of Zhualu. Not to mention that the one leading them was the young palace master who possessed the Rainbow Pearl. Back then, Limitless Palace had humiliated their Lan family and should have been punished long ago. Now that they had coincidentally met the other party's young palace master, if they could take the life of this young palace master, then the face that their Lan family had previously lost could be completely recovered. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips also curled into a cold smile. Her ink-black phoenix eyes flickered with a cold and sharp light. I'll give you a chance. Do what you said just now, and I'll spare the lives of the cultivators in your team. Otherwise, I'll kill you without mercy. Lan Qingyan's arrogant words had provoked Bailey Hongzhuang's anger. She was now the young palace mistress of Limitless Palace. Both parties were on equal footing. Now, Lan Qingyan actually dared to speak such nonsense to her. If she didn't teach Lan Qingyan a lesson, wouldn't it weaken the prestige of Limitless Palace? When Lan Qingyan heard Bailey Hongzhuang's words, she couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Then, she laughed out loud. That's really interesting. I, Lan Qingyan, have lived for so long, yet no one has ever dared to say such words to me. That's because you haven't seen the world, Bailey Hongzhuang said coldly. When these words came out, Lan Qingyan was once again stunned. Her face could no longer maintain the indifferent and unconcerned expression from before. This was because Bailey Hongzhuang's words made her unable to continue. On the contrary, the disciples of Limitless Palace gave a thumbs up to Bailey Hongzhuang in their hearts. The young palace mistress was indeed the young palace mistress. Even her ability to choke people with words was not something that ordinary people could compare to. Chapter 2375. Looks like you're not willing. Lan Qingyan's voice had a hint of viciousness. She had always been the one threatening others. Today, this woman actually dared to threaten her. It seemed that their Lan family and Limitless Palace were mutually exclusive existences. Today was the perfect opportunity to settle this once and for all. Is the Lan family's young lord such an idiot? Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was full of speechlessness. Did I not express myself clearly enough? In terms of aura, Bailey Hongzhuang was not inferior to Lan Qingyan at all. As the young palace lord of the Lan family, Lan Qingyan was used to being bossy and domineering. Naturally, she created a kind of aura. However, this was only the young lord. Bailey Hongzhuang was the real family lord. She was the person who led the entire Bailey family to glory. How could she lose her aura in front of Lan Qingyan? Of course, at this time, Bailey Hongzhuang was also secretly thinking about what realm Lan Qingyan's strength had reached. Unfortunately, as the future family lord of the Lan family, Lan Qingyan had a lot of skills. As long as Lan Qingyan did not make a move, she would not be able to find out Lan Qingyan's true strength. However, with Di Beichen's strength as the standard, there was still a certain gap between her and Lan Qingyan. After all, Lan Qingyan still had the Rainbow Pearl, a treasure that could speed up cultivation and increase strength. You're courting death. At this moment, Lan Qingyan could no longer maintain the smile on her face. Bailey Hongzhuang did not say a single word, and it could arouse the anger in her heart. She was really abominable. She had never seen such an abominable woman. If she did not personally take Bailey Hongzhuang's life today, she would not be Lan Qingyan. In the next moment, Lan Qingyan's figure moved and directly attacked Bailey Hongzhuang. She wanted to pull out Bailey Hongzhuang's tongue and make sure that Bailey Hongzhuang would never say such words again. Whether it was Limitless Palace or Lan Clan, none of them expected Lan Qingyan to suddenly launch an attack. By the time they reacted, it was already too late. Bailey Hongzhuang had been paying attention to Lan Qingyan's situation. Hence, when Lan Qingyan made her move, she immediately reacted. He instantly used fulgurating shadows and dodged Lan Qingyan's attack. Ta-ta-ta! Bailey Hongzhuang tapped the ground with her feet and appeared 100 meters away. Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes flashed with a shocking murderous aura. Her gaze was as sharp as a knife as she stared at Lan Qingyan. It was one thing for Lan Qingyan to be arrogant and despotic, but who would have thought that she would use a sneak attack? At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang also felt a bit of contempt for Lan Qingyan. When Lan Qingyan saw that Bailey Hongzhuang actually dodged her attack, her face turned ugly. She did not expect Bailey Hongzhuang's reaction to be so fast. One must know that she had used this move to deal with other cultivators in the past, and it had always been 100% hit. It seemed that she still underestimated Bailey Hongzhuang. According to her judgment, Bailey Hongzhuang should be younger than her by a few years. It was impossible for her to be stronger than her. What Lan Clan's young lord? She actually used such a despicable method, like a sneak attack. It's really too shameless. After seeing Lan Qingyan's actions, Pei Yifan could not help but be dumbfounded. This was far from the demeanor of a young lord in his imagination. Chapter 2376. Originally, the disciples of Limitless Palace did not understand why their palace master would suddenly express her dislike for the Lan family. Now that they saw the actions of the Lan family's disciples, they completely understood. They also felt disgust towards such a family. Lan Qingyan's sneak attack failed, and she already felt very humiliated. Now that she heard Li Yongbing's criticism, her face turned even uglier. She immediately waved her hand and ordered the disciples behind her. What are you waiting for? Do it. She did not care about the thoughts of the Limitless Palace disciples, because from today onwards, this group of people would disappear from the battlefield of the Battle of Zhuolu. There was no one else in the vicinity. Once they killed them, no one would know who had killed them. Of course, to Lan Qingyan, it was not a big deal even if this news was known by others. The enmity between the Lan family and Limitless Palace had already been made clear. In this battle of vying for supremacy, it was normal for teams with enmity to fight each other. There were countless examples of teams being completely annihilated. She could only say that Limitless Palace's luck was not good. It was not easy to find a young palace master, but in her first battle of Zhuolu, she would die in their hands. After hearing Lan Qingyan's call, the Lan family's disciples came forward one after another. Without saying anything, the energy in their body had already surged out. They held their weapons in their hands and were ready to fight. Leave no one alive, Lan Qingyan said coldly. Yes. After hearing Lan Qingyan's order, the faces of the Limitless Palace disciples turned gloomy to the extreme. Not only was the Lan family's young master arrogant, she was also vicious and merciless. Once she opened her mouth, she would either exterminate the entire sect or leave no one alive. She simply treated the Limitless Palace as a soft persimmon. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her right hand slightly and said coldly, "Since the Lan family's young master has already made the decision for us, then what are we waiting for?" The Limitless Palace disciples had long been unable to suppress the anger in their hearts. At this moment, after hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's order, they all clenched the weapons in their hands. Towards these bastards in front of them, they could only beat them until they were speechless. Exterminate this group of bastards, Xiaohei said angrily. Before meeting Lan Qingyan, the three beasts already had a lot of opinions about Lan Qingyan. Now, after meeting Lan Qingyan, their opinions were even greater. At first, he thought that Lan Qingyan was very young at that time, and that it was Lan Jingquang and Yuman Lan who stole the rainbow sacred pearl from his master. However, looking at Lan Qingyan now, he was afraid that she was even more annoying than her parents. I really feel that the Lan family must be blind to have chosen such a thing to be their patriarch. Xiaobai was speechless. Even if Lan Qingyan's strength was very strong, with her arrogant and egotistical personality, who knew how many enemies she would provoke for the Lan family in the future? You brought this upon yourself. Baisher's eyes flashed with a ruthless light. This Lan Qingyan was so rude. She snatched everything from Master and still dared to be arrogant here. She was simply abominable. The battle was on the verge of breaking out. Both sides had 10 people. Therefore, almost everyone met their opponent at the first moment. Bailey Hongzhuang naturally appeared in front of Lan Qingyan. She had tried her best to chase after Lan Qingyan for so many years. Only now did she appear in front of Lan Qingyan. She also wanted to know the gap between them. Chapter 2377. Boom! The origin energy in Lan Qingyan's body surged like a tidal wave. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression changed slightly and became more serious. Blue Realm Level 7. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately sensed Lan Qingyan's strength. Even though she already knew that Lan Qingyan was stronger than her, she did not expect her to be stronger by 4 levels. Fortunately, she had absorbed the icy cold fire. Otherwise, with her Blue Realm Level 1 strength, there was no way she could win against Lan Qingyan, who was Blue Realm Level 7. This was the accumulation of aristocratic families' resources. However, this kind of difference in strength was no longer terrifying to Bailey Hongzhuang. She started cultivating later than Lan Qingyan by so many years, but now she was able to catch up. Just from this point alone, it could be seen that Lan Qingyan's talent was not comparable to hers. If she was given a little more time, Lan Qingyan would definitely not be her opponent. It seemed that it would not be long before she could openly appear in front of the Lan family. When Lan Qingyan showed her strength, Bailey Hongzhuang also showed her strength. Lan Qingyan had always been curious about Bailey Hongzhuang's strength. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and her both used some kind of method to hide their strength, so it was impossible to determine. However, the moment she understood Bailey Hongzhuang's strength, she suddenly laughed out loud. Ha ha! I was wondering how powerful the young palace master of Wuji Palace was. It turns out that her strength is only Blue Realm Level 3. This kind of strength is not considered powerful in the entire Battle of Zhuolu. She is indeed a small sect that was established not long ago. She came to the Battle of Zhuolu to make a fool of herself. There was a big gap between the strength of the disciples and the successor. Because the successor could obtain the resources of the forces, their strength was naturally much stronger than the ordinary cultivators. The Battle of Zhuolu was a competition between the various forces. The successors competed against each other. The cultivators could never be compared to the successors. Similarly, the successor's strength also represented the strength of the force. Lan Qingyan had been famous since young. Her strength was much more powerful than the successors of the ordinary forces. It could be said that she had been famous for a long time. After the cultivators of the Lan family knew about Bailey Hongzhuang's strength, they all laughed out loud. Young master, with your strength, I'm afraid you can finish her in less than 10 moves. She wants to be the young palace master with this little strength? What a fool's dream. Limitless Palace is a trash sect. It's normal to have such a young palace master. However, our young master is good. He's willing to help Limitless Palace get rid of such a useless trash. Chapter 2378. In the face of Lan Qingyan's ridicule, Bailey Hongzhuang appeared very calm. She did not get angry because of this humiliation. In fact, she did not know how much humiliation she faced along the way, but this kind of humiliation also made her progress faster. If I'm not wrong, your strength 3 years ago was probably not as good as mine, right? Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved slightly. There was a 3-year gap between her and Lan Qingyan. 3 years later, Lan Qingyin was only at the 7th level of the Blue Realm. Thinking about it, Lan Qingyin probably just broke through to the Blue Realm 3 years ago, or even not yet. Once these words came out, Lan Qingyin's expression changed a little. She could see that Bailey Hongzhuang was younger than her, but she did not expect that Bailey Hongzhuang was younger than her by 3 years. From the looks of it, if it was 3 years ago, she would only be in the Green Realm at that time. Then, could it be that her cultivation talent was not as good as Bailey Hongzhuang? After thinking about this point, Lan Qingyin's gaze became even more ruthless. Since she knew that the opponent's talent was so strong, if she did not take advantage of this opportunity to strangle the opponent in the cradle, when Bailey Hongzhuang grew up in the future, wouldn't it become a big trouble? Bailey Hongzhuang. So what if your talent is not weak? The current you is destined to not be my opponent. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame yourself for not being born a few years earlier. When Lan Qingyin said this sentence, the veins on Bailey Hongzhuang's temple suddenly burst. What Lan Qingyin said was something that she also regretted. If she was born a few years earlier, then she, Lan Qingyin, would have nothing to do with the Lan family now. At this moment, when Lan Qingyin said these words, it was really indescribably ironic. If I was born a few years earlier, wouldn't you have died in my hands? You should thank the heavens for not treating you badly and letting you live a few more years. In terms of the ability to anger people to death, Bailey Hongzhuang never admitted defeat. What a sharp tongue. But soon, you won't be able to speak anymore. As soon as Lan Qingyin finished speaking, the pressure of a level 7 Blue Realm instantly crushed towards Bailey Hongzhuang. I'll show you how big the gap is between the 7th level and the 3rd level of the Blue Realm. At the level of the Blue Realm, there was a significant gap between each level. The difference of 4 levels was enough to prevent his opponent from unleashing his full strength. Lan Qingyin wanted to use this method to let Bailey Hongzhuang know that the current her was not someone Bailey Hongzhuang could defeat. She absolutely would not allow a girl whose looks and talent did not lose to hers to continue growing. Bailey Hongzhuang felt an earth-shattering pressure, as if a mountain was pressing down on her body. Her movements slowed down, and even the flow of elemental energy in her body was suppressed. Bailey Hongzhuang's entire body seemed to shrink in an instant, and her footsteps became especially heavy. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance, the curve of Lan Qingyin's lips gradually widened. She was not in a hurry to kill Bailey Hongzhuang immediately. She wanted to humiliate Bailey Hongzhuang before she died. However, in the next moment, before Lan Qingyin's smile could fully bloom, it had already frozen. Within the stiffness, there was a trace of ridicule. Boom! Chapter 2379. Kacha. A subtle sound rang out, and a crack appeared in the pressure space that Lan Qingyin spread out. Boom! As Bailey Hongzhuang fully displayed the energy of the blood aura field, Lan Qingyin's pressure space was completely shattered. Blood aura field. Lan Qingyin recognized the method used by Bailey Hongzhuang at a glance and couldn't help but exclaim. For ordinary people, they might not be familiar with the blood aura field, but for the heirs of powerful forces, they were extremely familiar with the use of the blood aura field. When Lan Qingyin's strength reached the Crimson Realm, the clan elders brought her to the blood aura field. With her talent and strength, everyone thought that she would definitely be able to obtain the inheritance of the blood aura field, but the final result disappointed everyone. At that time, she was also full of confidence. Since young, she had always walked smoothly and had never suffered any setbacks. She felt that she was born to be a genius in the limelight. No matter what difficulties she faced in cultivation, they were not a problem for her. However, her first setback was in the Blood Aura Tower. She worked hard for a long time, but still couldn't obtain the inheritance of the Blood Aura Tower. At that time, she only remembered that there was a name written on the Blood Aura Tower's record board that was similar to her age, Di Beichen. The elders told her that Di Beichen was the young lord of Tiangang's sect, which made her feel a little better. Thinking back, she stayed in the Blood Aura Tower for a long time until there was no longer any possibility of obtaining the Blood Aura Field. Then she left. Fortunately, she didn't hear any news of other people obtaining the Blood Aura Field after that, which made her feel a little more at ease. After all, the inheritance of the Blood Aura Field was extremely difficult to obtain. Otherwise, there wouldn't be only a few people who succeeded in the history of the Blood Aura Tower. However, she actually saw the Blood Aura Field on a girl who was younger than her by 3 years. At this moment, Lan Qingyin's eyes turned red. The thing that she couldn't do was actually done by a person she ridiculed. This was simply a slap in the face. Very quickly, Lan Qingyin retracted her shocked expression. She would never let Bailey Hongzhuang know about this. Bailey Hongzhuang ignored Lan Qingyin. After displaying the Blood Aura Field, she urged the energy of the Blood Aura Field to suppress Lan Qingyin's strength. Fortunately, Lan Qingyin did not have any other tricks up her sleeves. In a short period of time, Lan Qingyin's strength was suppressed from Blue Realm Level 7 to Blue Realm Level 5. However, during this process, Bailey Hongzhuang also discovered that the pressure of the Blood Qi field on different cultivators was different. If the opponent's strength was solid enough, then the Blood Aura field would only be able to suppress 2 ranks at most. If the opponent's foundation was not solid enough, then the Blood Aura field could suppress even more. So far, Bailey Hongzhuang had discovered that among all her previous opponents, suppressing Lan Qingyin's strength was the most difficult. Moreover, it consumed a lot of elemental energy. Just from this point, it could be seen that Lan Qingyin's reputation was not undeserved. Her strength was real. Therefore, she had to end this competition quickly. Once the time dragged on, the possibility of their failure would be greater. Chapter 2380. For Lan Qingyin, the most aggrieved thing was not this. Instead, after witnessing the power of the Blood Aura field, she finally understood how powerful it was. Ignoring the presence of coercion and lowering the opponent's cultivation, this was simply a cheat in battle. Although she had heard the Elder mention it before, she always felt that the Elder was exaggerating. How could there be such a magical ability in this world? However, after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang use it, she finally understood that the Elder was not exaggerating at all. Everything the Elder said was true. Not only Lan Qingyin, but the cultivators of the Lan family also changed their expressions when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang use the Blood Aura field to suppress Lan Qingyin's cultivation to level 5 of the Blue Realm. This kind of ability was too unbelievable. They had never seen the young master suffer such a big loss in the first exchange of blows with the other party. It seemed that the young palace master of Wuji Palace was not a simple character. You think that suppressing my cultivation by 2 levels is enough to deal with me? Lan Qingyin's face was ferocious and full of hatred. What a fool's dream. Bailey Hongzhuang was too lazy to talk nonsense with Lan Qingyin. Every time the Blood Aura field was maintained, it would consume more of her energy. Therefore, she had to resolve it as soon as possible. Cut the crap. Let's fight. After saying that, Bailey Hongzhuang held the colored glass sword tightly and attacked Lan Qingyin directly. Lan Qingyin saw that Bailey Hongzhuang actually dared to take the initiative to attack her, and the sarcasm in her eyes intensified. She immediately pulled out her long sword to meet the attack. Ding, ding, ding. The 2 figures were like the wind, and their movements were as fast as lightning. Every move was swift and fierce, wanting to kill the other party. Bailey Hongzhuang knew that Lan Qingyin was a tough opponent the moment she fought with Lan Qingyin. The Lan family had been in Shangxian continent for so many years and had a lot of experience. Therefore, not only was Lan Qingyin's cultivation strong, her physical strength was also outstanding. In front of a cultivator of the same level, it was extremely difficult to fight someone of a higher level. This was because the opponent also had the ability to fight someone of a higher level. Under such circumstances, Bailey Hongzhuang was unsurprisingly at a disadvantage. Sword light overflowed in all directions, and sparks flew everywhere. Upon closer inspection, one would notice that Bailey Hongzhuang and Lan Qingyin's attacks were thrilling and dangerous. If one was not careful, they would lose their lives. Ta-ta-ta. After a while, the two of them separated again like a whirlwind. Lan Qinyin looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a gaze that was more disdainful than before. She didn't expect that this unknown Limitless Palace's young palace mistress who appeared out of nowhere would have some ability. It was reasonable to say that even if her cultivation was suppressed to the 5th level of the Blue Realm, with Bailey Hongzhuang's strength of the 3rd level of the Blue Realm, she would not be able to compete with her. However, Bailey Hongzhuang had managed to hold on despite the disparity in their powers. She had only suffered a minor injury. This was not the result she had wanted. She wanted to defeat Bailey Hongzhuang as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Bailey Hongzhuang's clothes were already torn and fresh blood was faintly seeping out. Even though she was extremely careful just now, the disparity of 2 levels still caused her to be injured. "Master, how are you?" The 3 beasties saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was injured and immediately became concerned. At the same time, they had a deeper understanding of her powers. Chapter 2381. Bailey Hongzhuang waved her hand, indicating that she was fine. Although she did suffer some injuries, they weren't serious and didn't affect her. Seeing this, the 3 beasties were relieved. However, they stood in front of Bailey Hongzhuang and glared at Lan Qinyin. When Lan Qinyin saw the 3 contracted beasts in front of Bailey Hongzhuang, she was surprised at first, then the mockery in her eyes intensified. If her judgment was correct, the white demonic beast in front of her should be Bailey Hongzhuang's contracted beast. The other 2 were probably raised by Bailey Hongzhuang for fun. In the cultivation world, there were some women who liked cute demonic beasts and raised them as pets since they were young. However, Bailey Hongzhuang actually brought this kind of demonic beast to the Battle of Zhuolu. Wouldn't it be roasted and eaten? Trash is trash. Even the ones raised are useless trash. Lan Qinyin sneered. When these words came out, the 3 beasties were all enraged. "You ugly freak! How dare you insult me?" Xiaobai angrily shouted. This fellow had been unhappy for a long time. Now, she actually dared to call them trash? If you didn't steal someone else's rainbow pearl, would you have a position in the Lan family? You really think that you have an extraordinary destiny. Xiao Hei's words were even more thorough. She couldn't stand Lan Qinyin. Everything she had was stolen from her master. Now, she was acting as if she was born with a life of riches and honor. How laughable! After hearing Xiao Hei's words, Lan Qinyin couldn't help but stare blankly. Although many people knew about this matter, as she gradually grew up, there were fewer and fewer people who talked about this matter. Moreover, the Lan family had already sealed off the news. Other than a few well-informed forces, no one else knew about it. All these years, she had continuously displayed her abilities to tell everyone that her, Lan Qinyin, was definitely not inferior to that dead guy. Of course, she was also a little unhappy. After all, she didn't get the Rainbow God Pearl in a proper way. In the Lan family, as long as the Rainbow Pearl was mentioned, everyone couldn't help but think of the dead Lan Yinxiao's family. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's demonic beasts actually said such words. This made her flabbergasted. Wait, these 2 demonic beasts that looked like they were only for ornamental purposes could actually speak? Lan Qinyin looked at Xiao Hei and Xiaobai in shock. She only suspected that she had heard wrongly. How could this be possible? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were cold. Whether I'm a waste or not, it's not something a guy like you can say. At least, I don't have such a shameless father and mother. As soon as she opened her mouth, Bailey Hongzhuang's spearhead pointed directly at Lan Qingyin's parents. If it wasn't for what Lan Qinyin and her family had done, how could she have been a waste in the general's residence for so many years? Now, Lan Qinyin called her was a trash. Soon, she would definitely trample Lan Qinyin under her feet. Then, she would tell everyone who was the real trash. After all, what she stole wasn't hers. Even if she had enjoyed 20 years of glory, it was only a flash in the pan. Lan Qingyin's expression became extremely ugly. This was the first time someone dared to poke her in the back. However, what her parents did was indeed irrefutable. Chapter 2382. I don't need you to tell me what I'm like. At least I'm stronger than you now. Lan Qingyin said angrily. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't comment. The more arrogant Lan Qingyin was now, the worse Lan Qingyin would fall when she arrived at the Lan family. Master, we can't take it anymore. This brat dares to insult us. Xiao He and Xiao Bai were furious. With their looks, they were often looked down upon by their master, but they had never been insulted like this before. You dare to insult me? I'll let you see how powerful we are. Lan Qingyin found it funny when she saw Xiao He and Xiao Bai, two demonic beasts that looked like they could be killed with one slap, getting angry. Wait until I've dealt with your master. Then I'll skewer you and barbecue you. Xiao He and Xiao Bai ignored Lan Qingyin and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang instead. Although they were extremely unhappy with this brat, they had to admit that Lan Qingyin's strength was indeed very strong. If they weren't careful when dealing with her, they might really be in trouble today. With the existence of the Chaos Ring, they could naturally keep their lives, but what about the other cultivators in the team? Therefore, they had no other choice. After noticing Xiao He and Xiao Bai's line of sight, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the other side of the battle. Fortunately, the strength of the disciples of Limitless Palace and the disciples of the Lan family were not much different. At this moment, they were locked in a fierce battle, and it would be impossible to determine the winner in a short time. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. She understood that as the Lan family's patriarch, Lan Qingyin definitely didn't lack Earth-rank martial skills. If she used an ordinary martial skill, Lan Qingyin's strength that was 2 levels higher than her would not be able to achieve any effect. Therefore, they had to use an extremely strong move from the beginning. Otherwise, they would only be a burden to her. The origin energy in Bailey Hongzhuang's body surged rapidly, and a seal appeared between her hands. At the same time, Xiao He and Xiao Bai also began to move. Lan Qingyin was dumbfounded when she saw that Xiao He and Xiao Bai had reached Green Realm rank 9. These two seemingly harmless demonic beasts actually possessed such strength. It was simply too shocking. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang and her two contracted beasts' identical actions, Lan Qingyin understood that the martial skill they were about to display next was not simple. Immediately after, Lan Qingyin also displayed her martial skill. No matter what tricks Bailey Hongzhuang had up her sleeves, she would crush her ruthlessly. As Bailey Hongzhuang, Xiao He, and Xiao Bai's hand seals merged together, a huge 8 trigrams formation suddenly appeared in midair. It spun continuously and emitted a mysterious power. An astonishing power spread out from this 8 trigrams formation, and the origin energy in the air was attracted and continuously integrated into it. Lan Qingyin's movements were also very fast. A dark blue sea appeared behind her. The waves were turbulent, and the momentum was astonishing. With just a glance, Bailey Hongzhuang knew that Lan Qingyin was displaying an Earth-rank martial skill. Moreover, it was an intermediate Earth-rank martial skill. The background of the aristocratic families was evident. Lan Qingyin also felt the power of this 8 trigrams formation, and her eyes narrowed. She did not expect that the martial skill displayed by Bailey Hongzhuang and her 2 contracted beasts would be so powerful. Chapter 2383. Boom! The 2 attacks collided with each other. Black, white, and blue rays of light intertwined with each other. The entire sky was left with only these 2 colors. The rays of the sun had been completely covered. The terrifying energy continued to wreak havoc, and the extremely ear-piercing sound of the explosion rapidly resounded. In almost an instant, the trees within a radius of a few hundred miles around Bailey Hongzhuang and the others have been razed to the ground. Lan Qingyin and Bailey Hongzhuang's figures have been covered by the raging energy. It was impossible to see their positions clearly. The cultivators of Limitless Palace and Lawn family, who were fighting, could not help but stop when they saw this scene. They looked towards the place where the storm erupted. Everyone's figures flew away. Bailey Hongzhuang and Lan Qingyin's strength was too terrifying. If they did not retreat quickly, their fate would not be much better than the trees. After leaving a certain distance, the cultivators of Lan family looked at the terrifying storm in the distance in shock. They could not withstand this kind of power at all. They did not expect that Bailey Hongzhuang's strength was so much weaker than Lan Qingyin's, but she was still able to display such a powerful martial technique. It was really amazing. The disciples of Limitless Palace also looked at this scene in shock. It seemed that they had underestimated the strength of their young palace master. They originally thought that their young palace master was weaker than Lan Qinyin by 4 levels and that they would definitely lose this battle. But now, it seemed that there might be a chance to turn things around. After Xiao He and Xiao Bai finished their attacks, they quickly retreated together with Bailey Hongzhuang. The power of their combined martial technique was enough to fight across levels. However, Lan Qingyin's strength was really not to be underestimated, so they had to be careful. However, when Bailey Hongzhuang, Xiao He, and Xiao Bai retreated, Baisher narrowed his eyes and searched for Lan Qingyin's figure in this raging energy. He did not know how to display the fusion martial technique, so he could not help his master. However, Lan Qingyin's insult to him and his master was something that he could not tolerate. It must make Lan Qinyin pay the price. When Bailey Hongzhuang came out, she realized that Baisher did not come out with them. Her eyes immediately filled with worry. As White Lion's master, she couldn't be more familiar with White Lion's personality. It had always been very protective of its master. Presumably, Lan Qingyin's previous performance had already angered White Lion. However, the impact of these 2 waves of energy was so terrifying that if Baisher were to stay within them, it would be very dangerous. She could not let Baisher be in danger. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang prepared to charge into the energy storm. Xiao He and Xiao Bai could not help but panic when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang's actions. Master, it's too dangerous to go in now. The White Lion is inside. Bailey Hongzhuang ignored Xiao He and Xiao Bai's attempt to stop her. From a moment she formed a contract with the White Lion. She was the White Lion's sister and mother. For so many years, the White Lion had been by her side and treated her as his closest kin. She had long gotten used to it. If something were to happen to the White Lion, she would definitely not be able to accept it. Before Xiao He and Xiao Bai could hold Bailey Hongzhuang back, Bailey Hongzhuang had already charged into the storm. Damn it! Xiao He and Xiao Bai cursed and followed closely behind Bailey Hongzhuang. If something were to happen to Bailey Hongzhuang, then their existence would be meaningless. Chapter 2384. Lan Qingyin's shriek contained both anger and surprise. Caught off guard, everyone was taken aback. The Lan family's cultivators couldn't help but be stunned. Even if the power of Bailey Hongzhuang's martial arts wasn't small, with their understanding of their young master, such an attack shouldn't be something that their young master couldn't resist at all. However, what was with the young master's sudden scream? Before Bailey Hongzhuang could rush into the center of the storm, she saw a white figure rushing towards her. Master! Baisher was stunned for a moment when he saw Bailey Hongzhuang. Then, he was touched and worried. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately checked on Baisher's condition. There were only a few injuries on Baisher's body. Fortunately, they were not serious. It's good that you're fine. Xiao He and Xiao Bai also heaved a sigh of relief when they saw Baisher. Even though the 3 of them often bickered and competed with each other, they were all important partners in their hearts. Let's go. This was obviously not the time to talk. Bailey Hongzhuang and the 3 beasts quickly retreated. Fortunately, they were not in the center of the raging energy. As long as they surrounded themselves with Yuan Qi, they would be able to resist the effects to a certain extent. After retreating from the battle, Bailey Hongzhuang, Xiao He, and Xiao Bai's gazes fell on Baisher. Baisher, what did you do just now? What you did was too dangerous. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned, her beautiful eyes filled with worry. Fortunately, Nothing happened to Baishur. Otherwise, she would feel guilty for the rest of her life. Baishur naturally knew that his actions were a little impulsive and had worried his master. Instantly, he lowered his head in guilt. As a beast king, his eyesight was not comparable to that of ordinary beasts. Even in the raging energy, he was confident that he could find Lan Qingyin's figure and reduce the damage to himself. However, he did not expect his master to rush in because she was worried about him. It seemed that he could not do such a thing in the future. Fortunately, his master was fine. However, at this moment, Baishur's heart was filled with gratitude. Bailey Hongzhuang could not bear to see how guilty Baishur was. She patted Baishur's head and said, "I know you're doing this for me, but it's too dangerous. Don't do it in the future." Baishur nodded. "I won't let master worry about me anymore." Bailey Hongzhuang's clear eyes were filled with a touch of warmth. Ever since she had transmigrated, the three beasts had always been by her side. Their loyalty and devotion made her feel extremely touched. "White Lion, what did you do just now?" Xiao He and Xiao Bai looked at White Lion curiously. They knew White Lion's personality very well. For White Lion to suddenly do this, coupled with Lan Qingyin's screams, something must have happened. However, White Lion remained silent. The meaning behind his actions was obvious. You guys will see for yourselves later. Seeing this, Xiao He and Xiao Bai were even more puzzled. It seemed that White Lion had done something extraordinary. Otherwise, why would he be so pleased with himself? As the smoke and dust gradually dissipated, Bailey Hongzhuang and Lan Qingyin's figures appeared in everyone's line of sight. Bailey Hongzhuang had dodged quickly. Although she had suffered some injuries, they were not serious and did not affect her much. Chapter 2385. At this moment, Lan Qingyin was no longer as aloof as before. Her white clothes were now stained with smoke and dust, and there were a few faint bloodstains on her body. It was obviously caused by the previous battle with Bailey Hongzhuang. However, the crowd did not pay attention to Lan Qingyin's injuries. Instead, they looked at Lan Qingyin's right hand. Lan Qingyin's shoulder was already dripping with blood. The huge wound was so deep that the bone could be seen. Many of the bones were broken. It was obvious that she was bitten by a demonic beast. Looking at the situation, Lan Qingyin's right hand was almost bitten off. At this moment, the crowd finally understood why Lan Qingyin cried out in alarm. Such a terrifying wound must be extremely painful. Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze fell on Baishur. So this was what Baishur went to do. Baishur proudly raised his chin. This Lan Qingyin is so hateful. If I don't teach her a lesson, I won't be happy. If it wasn't for the fact that the storm raged so quickly and Lan Qingyin's reaction speed wasn't slow, her hand would have been completely bitten off by me. As a beast king, Baishur's teeth were exceptionally sharp. If it wasn't for the little accident, Lan Qingyin's hand would have been eaten into his stomach. Hearing this, Xiao He and Xiao Bai couldn't help but give Baishur a thumbs up. "Well done." Bailey Hongzhuang also exclaimed in her heart. She did not expect Baishur to not have any reaction before, but with a single move, Lan Qingyin had turned into such a miserable state. Presumably, Lan Qingyin's heart was filled with anger. When the disciples of Limitless Palace saw that Lan Qingyin and the young palace master had turned into such a miserable state after just a short exchange of blows, their battle prowess was greatly reduced. At the same time, they were shocked, but at the same time, they were delighted. Who asked this Lan Qingyin to be so arrogant earlier, which made them extremely unhappy? She really deserved it. Everyone sighed in their hearts. Baishur was indeed powerful. He really amazed the world with a single brilliant feat. Lan Qingyin's face was pale. Her anger had already reached the extreme. To her, dealing with Bailey Hongzhuang was an easy task. Who would have thought that she would be seriously injured? The most hateful thing was that Bailey Hongzhuang's contracted beast actually launched a sneak attack. Not to mention her, anyone else would have been hit in this situation. Who would have thought that the demonic beast would suddenly jump out when the energy was raging? Her reaction was considered fast. If she was a little slower, she wouldn't be able to keep her arm. That was something that she couldn't accept. She, Lan Qingyin, had never suffered such a big loss before. After witnessing this scene, the Lan family's cultivators no longer had the intention to continue fighting with the Limitless Palace's disciples. One by one, they stood behind Lan Qingyan. Right now, Lan Qingyan's right hand was obviously unable to move. If she were to encounter any danger at this time, they would have no face to return to the Lan family. The situation seemed to change in a short moment's notice. Naturally, the disciples of Limitless Palace quickly realized the change in the situation. Didn't they turn from a disadvantageous situation to an advantageous one? Bailey Hongzhuang also realized that this was a good opportunity. Taking advantage of the platform of the battle for supremacy to make the Lan family lose face was something that she was happy to see. Chapter 2386. For the current her, the most important thing was to find a place to recover from her injuries. If she continued to be in a deadlock here, it would be extremely disadvantageous to her. Bailey Hongzhuang's previous attack was quite powerful. In addition, she had a contract beast that could attack at any time. Even if she was in peak condition, she would still have to be careful, not to mention now that her injuries were so serious. In almost a split second, Lan Qingyan had already made the decision to retreat. For a gentleman to take revenge, 10 years is not too late. After she recovered from her injuries, she would definitely take Bailey Hongzhuang's life. Thinking of this, Lan Qingyan immediately made a gesture. The cultivators of the Lan family understood and planned to leave. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others naturally noticed this situation. Now that the opportunity was in their hands, they would not let it go. Young Lord Lan, how powerful were you before? Now that you want to leave with your tail between your legs, I'm afraid you have to ask for my opinion. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved into an enchanting and sarcastic smile. Her ink-black phoenix eyes flashed with a sharper gaze. No one is allowed to leave. Under Bailey Hongzhuang's command, the disciples of Limitless Palace blocked Lan Qingyan and the others. This sentence corresponded to what Lan Qingyan had said earlier about not leaving a single one alive. However, the two sides had already switched places. Lan Qingyan's face was ashen. She looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a gaze that could not wait to take her life. Unfortunately, the current situation was not suitable for her to stay here for long. Even if she was humiliated, there was nothing she could do. The faces of the Lan family disciples were also extremely ugly. This was a sure-win situation. Now that they had failed, it was too depressing. Bailey Hongzhuang, are you sure you want to be enemies with my Lan family? Lan Qingyan gritted her teeth. She had been arrogant for so many years, but today she was in such a predicament. She even had to show weakness to a cultivator who was weaker than her. Hearing Lan Qingyan's words, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but chuckle. Lan Qingyan, you seem to have already made these assertions before. Now you're asking me again. Do you think I'm stupid or are you too naive? A sentence filled with ridicule was like a ruthless slap on Lan Qingyan's face. Lan Qingyan's pale face flushed red, but in the current situation, she really couldn't think of any other way. Bailey Hongzhuang would not give Lan Qingyan the time to continue feigning civility. Even though there were no other cultivator teams nearby, no one could guarantee that no one would appear in the next moment. Snatch the identity card. Bailey Hongzhuang took the initiative to attack Lan Qingyan after saying that. Kill him while he's down. Bailey Hongzhuang never thought of this as taking advantage of others. On the contrary, she was extremely happy to beat the dog when it was down. The moment he said that, the disciples of Limitless Palace no longer hesitated. They didn't even give the other party a chance to speak as they sent out their martial techniques. Ding, ding, ding. The battle broke out again at this moment. Bailey Hongzhuang still faced Lan Qingyan. At this moment, Lan Qingyan's right hand was completely unable to move. With Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills, Lan Qingyan had already taken the elixir at the first moment. However, this injury was very serious. If she dared to move her arm now, her right hand would be completely broken. Chapter 23 87. Bailey Hongzhuang's every move was swift and fierce. In a short period of time, her sharp sword had already pierced several holes in Lan Qingyin's body. Fresh blood quickly dyed Lan Qingyin's clothes red. However, the pain on her body could not be compared to the anger in Lan Qingyin's heart. Originally, she used the sword with her right hand. Now that her right hand could no longer be used, she was not used to using the sword with her left hand. However, the strength of a 7th-level blue realm was not just for show. Therefore, she still had the power to resist. Bailey Hongzhuang was not anxious. At this level of strength, if she wanted to kill someone, unless she had the strength to completely crush the opponent, it would not be an easy task. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang used the shadow shifting technique. Her figure suddenly flashed, and before Lan Qinyin could react, Lan Qingyin's identity card had already fallen into her hands. Bailey Hongzhuang weighed the identity card in her hand. Looking at the words Lan Family's Lan Qinyin written on it, the corners of her mouth slowly spread into a smile. According to the rules of the Battle of Zhuolu, everyone's identity card was hung on their waist. In this way, the opponent would be able to know if your identity card had been taken away. If it had been taken away, the opponent would naturally not have the intention to deal with you. After Lan Qinyin saw that her identity card was taken away by Bailey Hongzhuang just like that, she was also anxious and anxious. With her reputation, if her identity card was taken away just like that, wouldn't it be a total loss of face? Bailey Hongzhuang, I'm going to kill you. Lan Qinyin gave it her all. She attacked Bailey Hongzhuang with shame and indignation. She must not lose face. When Bailey Hongzhuang was snatching the identity card, the speed of the Limitless Palace disciples was also very fast. Originally, their strength was on par with the Lan family's cultivators. Once they started fighting, the outcome would not be decided in a short period of time. However, the Lan family's cultivators were thinking of how to escape with Lan Qinyin. Under the situation where one side's momentum was flourishing and the other side's state of mind was unstable, their chances of success naturally increased. In a short period of time, many of the Lan family's cultivators' identity tokens had fallen into the hands of the Limitless Palace's disciples. Looking at the infuriated look of the Lan family's cultivators, the Limitless Palace's disciples were delighted to the extreme. Previously, the Lan clan cultivators were so arrogant that they had nowhere to vent their anger. Now that they saw the other party stomping his feet in anger, yet helpless, they only felt that all the resentment in their hearts had been vented. In the previous battle of vying for the throne, the Lan clan's strength had always been at the forefront. Who would have thought that this time, they would be able to obtain the Lan family's identity token so smoothly? After the Battle of Zhuolu ended, this would be a great achievement for their Limitless Palace. All these years, the Lan family had often shown all kinds of disdain because the palace master had rejected their goodwill. Once the news of them seizing the Lan family's disciple identity token spread out, the Lan family would really be slapped in the face. At the very least, the Lan clan would no longer have the qualifications to look down on Limitless Palace. Xiao He and Xiao Bai naturally took advantage of this opportunity to shrink their bodies and help the Limitless Palace's disciples snatch the identity tokens. In the midst of this battle, they were already panicking. How would the Lan family's cultivators notice the existence of these two figures? By the time they noticed, it was already too late. Chapter 2388. Lan Qinyin was enraged when she saw that the Lan family's identity cards had all been taken away in a short period of time. You bunch of trash. Her identity card was taken away because she was seriously injured, but the others were also so negligent and stupid. She was furious. The Lan family's cultivators also had unspeakable bitterness. They tried their best to protect their identity cards during the battle, but for some reason, their identity cards fell to the ground by themselves. However, even they themselves couldn't believe it, let alone the young master. Xiao He and Xiao Bai came back after doing all this, as if nothing had happened. They could be said to be extremely proficient in such underhanded means. The Lan family's team also released their contracted beasts, so the battlefield was constantly expanding. The contracted beasts also formed a battle circle. Kacha, Bailey Hongzhuang's glass sword fell. Lan Qingyin's right arm was completely cut off by Bailey Hongzhuang. Ah! A scream came from Lan Qingyin's mouth. Her eyes were fixed on the arm on the ground. She didn't expect her right arm to be completely cut off like this. However, the next scene made Lan Qingyin collapse even more. That was because Bai Shi's speed was extremely fast. The moment Bailey Hongzhuang cut off Lan Qingyin's arm, Bai Shi had already rushed up. By the time Lan Qingyin reacted, her arm had already been eaten into Bai Shi's stomach. Seeing this, Lan Qingyin was also dumbfounded. This situation was completely beyond her expectations. It couldn't be worse. Before participating in the Battle of Zhuolu, she had already understood the situation of many forces. With her strength, there was basically no danger in this Battle of Zhuolu. However, the Battle of Zhuolu hadn't even started halfway, and she had already lost an arm. Bailey Hongzhuang ignored Lan Qingyin's anger and stabbed out with her glass sword again. Compared to the sufferings that their family had endured in the past, Lan Qingyin had only lost a hand. What did that count as? Lan Qingyin quickly dodged, but she could only watch as the sharp blade got closer and closer to her. Her eyes couldn't help but reveal a touch of fear. If she were to die in the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang, that would be something she would not be able to accept. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang's sword was about to pierce Lan Qingyin's heart, a metallic sound suddenly rang out. Ding! Bailey Hongzhuang's sword was hit by a huge force and deviated from its angle. After noticing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but frown. On the ground, a flying sword was stuck in the ground. Bailey Hongzhuang turned around and looked in the direction where the flying dagger came from. She saw a group of people walking over. The man in the lead was dressed in a green robe. His hair was tied up in a high crown. His temperament was outstanding, and he was handsome. He was playing with a throwing knife in his right hand. Clearly, she was the one who had attacked earlier. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the man in front of her. In her mind, she was trying to figure out which force he belonged to. Although she had some understanding of the forces participating in the Battle of Zhuolu, she had no understanding of the style of their successors. Ouyang family, Long Xianjing and the rest had already recognized the newcomers. Their expressions quietly turned ugly. Chapter 2389. This was something that everyone had known about a long time ago. After all, the Ouyang clan and Lan clan had a close relationship. The heirs of the two clans were of similar age. If they could tie the knot, it would undoubtedly be a good thing. Therefore, both the Ouyang clan and Lan clan had such plans. However, Lan Qingyin was arrogant and somewhat dissatisfied. Therefore, she did not get married. No matter what, the Ouyang clan and Lan clan were allies. This could be seen from Ouyang Etienne's rescue of Lan Qingyin. Qingyin, I saved you this time. Ouyang Etienne's face was full of smiles as he walked over gracefully. The other cultivators of the Ouyang clan also had smiles on their faces. Usually, the Lan clan's young master always had an arrogant look. Even towards their young master, he was somewhat disdainful. They did not expect that they would need their young master's rescue. This made them feel very happy. After seeing Ouyang Etienne, Lan Qingyin also heaved a sigh of relief. At least, her life was saved. When Ouyang Etienne saw Lan Qingyin's miserable state, his smiling face could not help but freeze. Regarding Lan Qingyin's strength, he could not be more familiar with it. Even if the heirs of various forces were to attack, it would be difficult to injure Lan Qingyin. But now, Lan Qingyin had become like this. Her right hand was gone. If he did not see wrongly, this team was Limitless Palace's team. Could it be that she was seriously injured by Limitless Palace's disciples? This was too inconceivable, right? Stop talking nonsense. Lan Qingyin was very unhappy that her sorry state was seen by others. Help me kill this woman. Lan Qingyin, who was originally very weak, became arrogant again at this moment. The Ouyang clan had always been her Lan clan's ally. Now that Ouyang Etienne was here, it would not be difficult for him to help her take Bailey Hongzhuang's life. Not only that, Limitless Palace's team would be completely destroyed today. Bailey Hongzhuang's face sank. She did not expect someone to come out of nowhere. The Ouyang clan's team was not weak. Once the Ouyang clan and Lan clan's cultivators joined forces, their situation would be dangerous. Moreover, from the way Lan Qingyan spoke to Ouyang Etian, it could be seen that the two were very familiar with each other. Lan Qingyan, if I help you, how will you thank me? Ouyang Etian was not in a hurry. There was a faint smile in his eyes. Normally, Lan Qingyan had always been arrogant and disdainful. Today, it was rare for Lan Qingyan to ask for his help. Naturally, he would take advantage of this opportunity to suppress Lan Qingyan's arrogance. However, he had always been very satisfied with a woman like Lan Qingyan who was strong and had a good background. In his eyes, Lan Qingyan would be his wife sooner or later. Lan Qingyan frowned coldly. She and Ouyang Etian had known each other for so long, so she understood Ouyang Etian's temperament very well. In fact, among all the young elites she had seen over the years, only Ouyang Etian was the most outstanding. As long as you help me eliminate the people from Limitless Palace, I will consider marrying you. During this period of time, her family had been telling her about this matter, and she had gradually accepted it. Although she had opinions from time to time, in the eyes of ordinary people, Ouyang Etian was already a rare and perfect husband. Chapter 2390. Although Lan Qingyan's arm was gone, Ouyang Etian didn't care. With the Lan family's means and Lan Qingyan's status in the Lan family, this severed arm would definitely grow back. What's more, Lan Qingyan had been famous for a long time. Among the younger generation of women, there was probably no one who could compare to Lan Qingyan. In addition, Lan Qingyan was naturally beautiful. Because of this, he was so patient with Lan Qingyan. Listening to Lan Qingyan's words, Ouyang Etian turned around and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. When he saw Bailey Hongzhuang for the first time, even the experienced and knowledgeable Ouyang Etian couldn't help but praise in his heart. What a peerless beauty! Previously, he only saw Bailey Hongzhuang's back and only thought of Bailey Hongzhuang as an ordinary disciple of Limitless Palace, so he didn't pay attention to her at all. But now, looking at the woman in front of him, whether it was her appearance or temperament, she was peerless and unique, making people's eyes light up. Lan Qingyan was already one of the top beauties, but the woman in front of him was clearly more beautiful than Lan Qingyan. Even though she had a cold face at the moment, her elegance and refinement carried a kind of coldness that repelled people thousands of miles away, making people want to get closer to her. How come he hadn't seen such a beauty before? Lan Qingyan was looking forward to Ouyang Etian fiercely teaching Bailey Hongzhuang a lesson to avenge her. But when she saw Ouyang Etian staring at Bailey Hongzhuang in a daze, she couldn't help but feel even more embarrassed. From the first time she saw Bailey Hongzhuang, she knew that this woman was a threat. She had always been very confident in her appearance, but after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang, she also felt a bit of jealousy. Just from this point alone, she could tell. The disciples of Limitless Palace were on guard. If they were to fight 1 against 2, it was almost impossible under such circumstances. So, the only thing they could do was to protect the young palace master with their lives. The life of the young palace master was much more important than their lives. No matter what, they couldn't let anything happen to the young palace master. However, after seeing Ouyang Etian's reaction at this moment, they were both nervous and amused at the same time. Anyone who saw the young palace master's appearance would be stunned. Even if they had been training with the young palace master for so many days, they still couldn't help but take a few more glances at the young palace master. "Are you a disciple of Limitless Palace?" Ouyang Etian asked. Limitless Palace's young empress, Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang revealed her identity. She wanted the other party to understand that they were equals. As soon as this was said, Ouyang Etian's reaction was the same as Lan Qingyan's earlier reaction. He also did not receive any news and did not know that Wuji Palace also had a young palace master. I didn't know that Limitless Palace had a young palace master. Ouyang Etian looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with interest. To be able to injure Lan Qingyin to such an extent, to have the countenance of a flower, and to be the young palace master of Limitless Palace. Logically speaking, Bailey Hongzhuang's name should have been known by everyone. Most importantly, he felt that this Bailey Hongzhuang's name was somewhat familiar. However, he couldn't remember where he had heard it before. Our young palace master didn't come back until the Battle of Zhuelu. What's so strange about you not knowing? Pei Yifan said. Chapter 2391. While Ouyang Etian was sizing her up, Bailey Hongzhuang's mind was constantly thinking of a way to leave. In this situation, if they left directly, Lan Qingyin would definitely not let it go. Moreover, the Lan clan's cultivator identity card was still with them. However, no matter how much she thought, there was no way. The situation in front of them was a dead end. As long as Ouyang Etian and Lan Qingyin cooperated, they would most likely fall into a situation where they would be completely wiped out. Even if they risked their lives to leave, the team was bound to suffer heavy losses. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but feel anxious. If she couldn't solve this situation, she could only take the risk and use the Chaos Ring. Once she used the Chaos Ring, the special power of the Chaos Ring would be exposed in front of everyone. In this way, she would fall into an even more dangerous situation in the future. However, under such a dangerous situation, she had no other way. She could only take one step at a time. After all, she couldn't watch the disciples and the team be completely wiped out like this. This was the first time she appeared in front of everyone as the young palace master of Limitless Palace. If she ended up like this, it would be terrible. What's more, Long Xianjing and the others were extremely outstanding disciples in the sect. In the future, they would most likely be the mainstay of the sect. She didn't want Limitless Palace to suffer such a big loss. Lan Qingyin saw that Ouyang Etian had been looking at Bailey Hongzhuang with interest but didn't make a move. She couldn't help but feel angry in her heart. Ouyang Etian, why aren't you making a move? Lan Qingyin said angrily. She knew that men would act the same way when they saw beautiful women. However, she, who had never been ignored before, was actually ignored now. This was simply unbearable for her. Listening to Lan Qingyin's words, Ouyang Etian finally recovered from his thoughts. Such a beauty, he really couldn't bear to make a move. Although Limitless Palace was established for a short time, everyone knew that Limitless Palace's strength was absolutely not weak. Thinking about it, once the world knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was the young palace master of Limitless Palace, there would be more people chasing after Bailey Hongzhuang than Lan Qingyin. Because, no matter from which angle, Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't weaker than Lan Qingyin. It was because of this that he hesitated. However, this hesitation only lasted for a short time, and Ouyang Etian had already determined the answer. The relationship between the Ouyang clan and the Lan clan had always been very good. The matter between him and Lan Qingyin had long been discussed. On the contrary, Limitless Palace and Lan family were two completely opposite clans. Therefore, no matter what kind of thoughts flashed through his mind at this moment, he would ultimately stand on Lan Qingyin's side. He could only sigh inwardly that it was a pity for such a great beauty. Qingyin, I will avenge you right now. Ouyang Etian drew his weapon, and his eyes turned from pity to fierceness. At the same time, his men behind him also entered battle mode. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the change in Ouyang Etian's eyes in a short period of time and sighed in her heart. Sure enough, he was worthy of being the successor of the Ouyang family. This change was really fast and decisive. Chapter 2392. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the others saw this scene, they immediately took out their weapons. Right now, they had no other way. They could only fight first and talk later. Master, what should we do? Xiao He and Xiao Bai couldn't help but ask after sizing up the situation in front of them. No matter which angle they looked at it from, they had no chance of winning this battle. With Lan Qingyin's viciousness, once they fell into her hands, they would die without a doubt. A cold and resolute light flashed across her deep and beautiful eyes. Later on, find a chance to escape into the chaos ring together. After hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Xiao He and Xiao Bai's faces became dignified. The chaos ring was a divine tool. This was a huge secret. Once it was exposed, it would be terrible if someone had bad intentions towards Bailey Hongzhuang. However, in the current situation, they really had no other choice, so they could only acquiesce. As the battle broke out, Bailey Hongzhuang found that Ouyang Etien's strength was comparable to Lan Qingyin's. He was a very difficult person to deal with. When Ouyang Etienne saw that Bailey Hongzhuang's strength was only at the 3rd level of the Blue Realm, his eyes couldn't help but reveal a trace of doubt. Since Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation was only at the 3rd level of the Blue Realm, how could Lan Qingyun fall into such a miserable state in the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang? This was too unbelievable. However, in front of Lan Qingyun, Ouyang Etienne wouldn't voice out the doubts in his heart. After Lan Qingyun saw Bailey Hongzhuang and Ouyang Etienne fighting, a proud smile appeared on her face. Later, when Bailey Hongzhuang fell into her hands, she would definitely break the limbs of Bailey Hongzhuang and that bastard and let them have a good taste of pain. Although Bailey Hongzhuang used the blood chi field to deal with Ouyang Etienne, there was a certain degree of difficulty, but it wasn't life-threatening in a short period of time. However, under the cooperation of the Lan family and Ouyang family's disciples, the situation of the Limitless Palace's disciples was extremely bad. In a short period of time, everyone had different degrees of injuries on their bodies. Bailey Hongzhuang continued to move closer to Long Xianjing and the others. She was about to enter the primordial chaos ring. However, at this moment, another familiar voice sounded. 2 against 1. I didn't know that the Lan family and Ouyang family had such a habit. As soon as these words came out, everyone who was fighting could not help but stop their attacks and look in the direction of the source of the voice. At this time, if another team appeared, the situation might change. Bailey Hongzhuang, who was planning to take everyone into the primordial chaos ring, also stopped and looked at the newcomer with a little surprise. The person wore a black embroidered robe, and his face was extremely handsome. His narrow eyes were deep, and the space between his handsome brows revealed a noble and fierce aura. Behind this man, there was a group of cultivators who were also wearing black robes. Obviously, this was another team. Seeing the sudden appearance of this unfamiliar team, the people from the 3 forces were all surprised. They didn't know whether the other party was an enemy or a friend, and what kind of thoughts did they have to intervene at this time. Ouyang Etienne's handsome eyebrows slightly twisted, and he looked at the other party in doubt. He had never dealt with the other party before. Could it be that the other party was here to help Limitless Palace? However, he had never heard of any dealings between the other party and Limitless Palace. Chapter 2393. Although his tone was questioning, Ouyang Etienne's expression was very certain. The Shurtian Pavilion had always been a very mysterious force in the Shengxian continent, but no one could underestimate this force. Usually, everyone seemed to have no interaction with the Shurtian Pavilion, but the Shurtian Pavilion might hold secrets that even they didn't know when they had been leaked. Therefore, almost by default, no one was willing to have any conflict with the Shurtian Pavilion. The people of the Shurtian Pavilion were always dressed in black at all times, just like the Shurtian Pavilion's characteristics. It was too representative. However, the young master of the Shurtian Pavilion had never appeared in front of the world until the young master appeared in the assessment. He still had a skeptical attitude towards this news. With the strength of the young master of the Shurtian Pavilion, how could he go back to participate in the assessment? This was too strange. However, before the start of the Battle of Zhuolu, he had already heard from his family that Mo Yunjue would participate in the Battle of Zhuolu. He didn't expect to see the real person so soon. Yes, Mo Yunjue's attitude was cold. Even in the face of Ouyang Etienne's slightly flattering words, he was still unmoved. The moment Lan Qingyun saw Mo Yunjue, she was already stunned. Such a handsome man, whether it was his bearing or his aura, gave people a shocking feeling. In Lan Qingyin's memory, there was only one man with such an outstanding temperament that was unforgettable. That was the figure she had caught a glimpse of when she was in the Yu clan. Even if it was just a simple glance, she still couldn't forget it. During this period of time, that silhouette often appeared in her dreams, making her heart jump with joy. Unfortunately, until now, she still didn't know who that man was. She felt that from the temperament that man revealed at that time, he shouldn't be an ordinary person. However, she knew most of the young talents in the Shangxian continent, but she had never seen such a person. She had also thought of looking for this person, but the Shangxian continent was so big that looking for someone with an unknown name and identity was like looking for a needle in a haystack. What's more, with her identity as the young master of the Lan clan, this kind of thing wouldn't be good for her. However, the man in front of her was also so outstanding. She thought that Ouyang Etian was already very good, but now standing next to Mo Yunjue, he was obviously weaker. When Lan Qingyan knew that Mo Yunjue was the young master of the Shitian Pavilion, her gaze changed again. The Shitian Pavilion was a force that few people dared to provoke. It had always been extremely mysterious. She didn't expect its young master to be this outstanding and handsome man in front of her. However, she didn't know the purpose of the Shitian Pavilion's team. The disciples of Limitless Palace also looked at the team from Shitian Pavilion with apprehension. They had never interacted with Shitian Pavilion before. On the contrary, Ouyang Etian's team's young. Originally, they were already in a desperate situation. Now, with the addition of the Heaven Slaughter Pavilion, they were really powerless to reverse the situation. They were afraid that even if they risked their lives, they wouldn't be able to let the young palace master safely leave. Chapter 2394. Young Master Mo, it's an honor to meet you. Ouyang Etian cupped his hands, and his gaze fell on Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Young Master Mo, today's matter is a personal grudge between us and Limitless Palace. I hope young Master Mo won't intervene. If there's a chance in the future, I'll definitely thank you in person. As soon as he said this, everyone's gaze fell on Mo Yunjue. They didn't know what choice Mo Yunjue would make. Ouyang Etian and Lan Qingyan didn't panic. In their opinion, Mo Yunjue only appeared at this time to leave a friendship. He wouldn't intervene at all. The expressions of the disciples of Limitless Palace also changed unpredictably. If possible, they really hoped that the cultivators of Shitian Tower could help them. Unfortunately, this was simply impossible. However, among everyone, only Bailey Hongzhuang and the cultivators of Shitian Tower knew what was going on. The three beasties immediately breathed a sigh of relief after seeing Mo Yunjue appear. They originally thought that they had reached the end of the road. They didn't expect that Mo Yunjue would actually pass by here. With the friendship between Mo Yunjue and their master, it was needless to say what choice Mo Yunjue would make. The cultivators of Shitian Tower naturally knew that the woman in front of them was the woman that their young master had been admiring for a long time. During this time, their young master had been looking for her. Although they were somewhat dissatisfied that Bailey Hongzhuang chose Di Beichen instead of their tower lord, the woman that their young master liked absolutely couldn't be bullied by others. Young Master Ouyang, I think you've made a mistake. Bailey Hongzhuang's matter is my matter. Since you have a grudge with Bailey Hongzhuang, then you naturally have a grudge with me. Mo Yunjue's voice was indifferent and cold. However, the ruthlessness and decisiveness in his words couldn't be clearer. If he dared to touch a hair on Bailey Hongzhuang's head, he would be going against him. As soon as these words came out, Ouyang Etian and Lan Qingyan, who were full of confidence, were dumbfounded. They looked at Mo Yunjue in astonishment, wondering if they had heard wrongly. They had never heard of Bailey Hongzhuang before, but the young master of Shitian Pavilion actually said that Bailey Hongzhuang's matter was his matter. What kind of situation was this? Let alone the cultivators from Ouyang clan and Lan clan. Even the cultivators from Limitless Palace were dumbfounded. What kind of situation is this? Every cloud has a silver lining. Previously, They did not know that their young palace master had a relationship with the young palace master of Slaughter Heaven Pavilion. When they were in the Limitless Palace, they had never heard the sect master or the elders say anything about the heaven-devouring tower. The young palace master really gave them a big surprise. For a moment, the disciples of Limitless Palace heaved a sigh of relief. Just a second ago, they were still in a life-and-death situation. At this moment, there was already a turning point. This was simply rising from hell to heaven. Mo Yunjue's gaze fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's face and the moving expression between her eyebrows, the worry in his heart was put down. These days, he had been looking for Bailey Hongzhuang. He was worried that Bailey Hongzhuang would be in danger. However, the scope of the Battle of Zhuolu was not large, but it was not small either. It was not easy to find a team. Chapter 2395. Thinking of this, Mo Yunjue felt a sense of excitement in his heart. Thinking back, if it wasn't for Deep Beichun knowing Bailey Hongzhuang earlier than him, then the current situation might have been different. Unfortunately, the difference of one step had become an insurmountable galaxy. Lan Xingyin and Ouyang Etian originally had some doubts about Mo Yunjue's words. At this moment, after seeing Mo Yunjue's gaze towards Bailey Hongzhuang, they understood. They clearly saw a kind of deep affection in his eyes. Obviously, Bailey Hongzhuang was his sweetheart. Lan Xingyin looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in shock. With her identity, she never knew who the young master of Shirtian Pavilion was. Bailey Hongzhuang actually captured Mo Yunjue's heart. For a moment, Lan Xingyin's heart was extremely unbalanced. If one were to compare the forces of Shirtian Pavilion and Ouyang clan, both of them were very strong. However, if one were to compare Mo Yunjue and Ouyang Etian, it was obvious that Mo Yunjue was better. Not to mention other things, Ouyang Etian's aura was weaker. Thinking that Bailey Hongzhuang's husband was actually better than her, she was about to die from anger. This Bailey Hongzhuang who suddenly appeared had the possibility of surpassing her in every aspect. This made her, who had always thought highly of herself, unable to accept it. Ouyang Etian was not surprised by this scene. Bailey Hongzhuang was obviously a very outstanding woman. If it wasn't for the good relationship between Ouyang clan and Lan clan, he might have also chosen Bailey Hongzhuang. Food and lust were human nature. No matter how mysterious the young master of Shirtian Pavilion was, men were always the same on this point. However, the current situation was not good for them. Mo Yunjue walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side and sized up the injuries on Bailey Hongzhuang's body. His handsome face was quickly filled with a touch of concern. "Hongzhuang, how are your injuries?" Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head slightly and said, "I'm fine. They're all minor injuries." Mo Yunjue carefully sized up Bailey Hongzhuang. After determining that Bailey Hongzhuang's injuries were really not serious, he was relieved. He was very clear about the hatred between Bailey Hongzhuang and Lan Xingyin. He didn't expect that Bailey Hongzhuang would meet Lan Xingyin so early. This was really fate. "Since everyone is here, let's make it 2 against 2. Mo Yunjue's voice was cold and lazy, but everyone could feel the anger vaguely. Mo Yunjue was indeed angry. He saw the previous situation very clearly. The Lan family and Ouyang family had already forced Bailey Hongzhuang and the others into a desperate situation. If he didn't arrive in time, the group of people from Limitless Palace would probably have died. Since the Lan family and Ouyang family liked to take advantage of others, he didn't mind letting them have a good taste of it while Lan Xingyin was injured. After seeing that Mo Yunjue actually took the initiative to declare war, Lan Xingyin and Ouyang Etian's expressions changed. Shirtian Pavilion had always been mysterious, but the strength of this cultivator was very powerful. This point could be seen in the previous Battle of Zhuolu. It was also because of this that the major forces never dared to underestimate Shirtian Pavilion. This time, Mo Yunjue personally led the team. This time, their strength would be stronger than the previous years. Lan Qingyin's right hand was broken, and her fighting strength was greatly reduced. If they continue to fight like this, it wouldn't be good for them. Chapter 2396. When the disciples of Limitless Palace saw that Mo Yunjue actually took the initiative to declare war, they secretly exclaimed in their hearts. In the past, they didn't know anything about the young master of Shurtian Pavilion and didn't feel anything. Now that they saw it with their own eyes, their favorable impression of the young master of Shurtian Pavilion soared rapidly. Previously, the Lan family and Ouyang family had forced them to such a state. Now let's see if the Lan family and Ouyang family could continue to be proud. Bailey Hongzhuang also felt a burst of gratitude after seeing Mo Yunjue stand up for her. This not only helped Limitless Palace to regain their face, but also prevented the secret of the Chaos Ring from being exposed. This really made her feel relieved. Mo Yunjue really came at the right time. Look at Lan Qingyin's expression. She really thought that we didn't have any helpers. Ridiculous. Xiao He proudly raised her chin. She looked like a villain who had achieved success, but still revealed some cuteness. Our master's current foundation is not any worse than Lan Qingyin's. This stupid woman will soon be beaten into the dust. This is only the first blow. Xiao Bai's face was full of smiles. Now that their master had revealed the foundation behind this, it would definitely scare a lot of people. Bai sure didn't speak, but from his relaxed and squinted eyes, one could see that his current mood was very good. He could finally hold his head high. Young Master Mo, now we are 2 against 2. If we fight, it's very likely that both sides will suffer. Once other teams appear, it will be a fisherman who reaps the benefits. Why don't we fight another day? Ouyang Etienne slowly said after weighing the pros and cons. Although it was a bit embarrassing, as the successor, what kind of storm hadn't he seen? The most important thing was to know when to yield and when to stand tall. There would still be opportunities in the future. After hearing Ouyang Etienne's words, Lan Qinyin also breathed a sigh of relief. With her current situation, it was really not suitable for her to continue fighting. Now, she urgently needed to find a place to rest. The pain from her right arm was already unbearable. However, Mo Yunjue obviously didn't intend to give anyone a chance. Why not just pick a day? Coincidentally, I still lack an identity card. As soon as he said this, the atmosphere became tense again. Mo Yunjue's attitude couldn't be more obvious. It was impossible to leave this place unscathed. When Mo Yunjue said this, the cultivators of Shurtian Pavilion had already taken out their weapons and were ready to fight. Seeing this, the Lan family and Ouyang family's faces turned ugly. Mo Yunjue really didn't give them any face. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but look at Mo Yunjue. Grandpa Mo Yunjue was looking at Bailey Hongzhuang with a face full of smiles. Right now, they weren't in a disadvantageous position. Naturally, there was no need to make the other party feel comfortable. Young Lord Ouyang, the battle between us is not over yet, so let's continue. Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful face was cold and ruthless. Previously, the other party's pressure had also aroused the anger of Bailey Hongzhuang. Since the other party liked to bully others so much, now that her helpers were here, how could she let them have a chance to escape? At this moment, the cultivators of Limitless Palace were as if they had been injected with chicken blood. It was as if they couldn't feel the pain on their bodies. There was only a thick sense of excitement. Awesome. Chapter 2397. Ouyang Etienne and Lan Qinyin looked at each other. Now that the situation had reached this stage, even if they didn't want to take action, it was impossible. Lan Qinyin felt helpless. Today's situation was really full of twists and turns, which was beyond their expectations. However, since things had already reached this stage, she had no other choice. The battle broke out in an instant. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest exchanged blows again. However, Ouyang Etienne was now being dealt with by Mo Yunjue. Bailey Hongzhuang's opponent was still Lan Qinyin. Thinking of Lan Qingyin's smug look, Bailey Hongzhuang felt even more unhappy. This woman was so vicious. If she didn't teach her a lesson, how could she face her injured teammates? As soon as Lan Qingyin saw Bailey Hongzhuang's posture, she knew that the situation wasn't good, but she could only block the attack. Losing an arm would greatly affect a person's coordination. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't give Lan Qingyin the slightest chance and quickly met her attack. 40 people were quickly involved in the battle. In addition to the demonic beasts, the range and fluctuations of the battle could be said to be shocking. In a short period of time, everything around had turned into nothingness. One could only see the collision of energy. It could be said to be earth-shattering. Rumble. The ground constantly emitted sounds as if it would collapse at any time. The spiderweb-like cracks had already spread deeper and deeper on the ground. It looked extremely terrifying, as if a huge monster was ready to swallow everyone at any time. Bailey Hongzhuang grabbed Lan Qingyin's neck with one hand and quickly stuffed a medicinal pill into Lan Qingyin's mouth. She wasn't in a hurry to kill Lan Qingyin immediately. Lan Qingyin's lowly life still had some use. After she openly went to the Lan family, she wanted to defeat Lan Qingyin in front of everyone and give Lan Jingquang and his family a resounding slap. She wanted to tell them that what they snatched didn't belong to them. If they couldn't be compared, they couldn't be compared. No matter how many underhanded methods they used, they still couldn't be compared. She wanted to do this in front of her parents and win back the glory for them in front of everyone in the Lan family. If he were to kill Lan Qingyin now, it would be too comfortable for her. She wanted Lan Qingyin to properly experience the torment they had endured all these years. That was a kind of unspeakable pain. If one did not personally experience it, one would never understand what kind of feeling it was. When Lan Qingyin saw Bailey Hongzhuang's actions, she hastily tried to stop her. Unfortunately, it was extremely difficult for her to do so with only one hand left. In addition, Bailey Hongzhuang's actions were completely out of her expectations. By the time she reacted, the bullet had already entered her body. Cough, cough. Lan Qingyin quickly took a few steps back and wanted to swallow the pill. Unfortunately, the pill melted in her mouth and she couldn't spit it out. Instantly, her expression became extremely ugly. Bailey Hongzhuang, what did you do to me? Lan Qingyin widened her eyes and stared at Bailey Hongzhuang. She couldn't believe that Bailey Hongzhuang would suddenly do such a thing. She had always been very familiar with the Yu family and understood her grand-aunt's methods. Her grand-aunt was the same. When dealing with people, she would feed them a pill and they would suffer incomparable pain. Chapter 2398. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Lan Qingyin indifferently. Her expression was indifferent and alienated. Won't you know what it is after you feel it? This was something she had specially prepared for Lan Qingyin. After witnessing the various poisons that had been planted in her parents' bodies, a strong hatred had taken root and sprouted in her heart. Therefore, she developed this poison so that Lan Qingyin and the others could also taste the same pain. However, she didn't expect everything to go so smoothly. Even if Lan Qingyin left the Battle of Zhuolu to find Yu Siqing, this poison wouldn't be so easy to cure. She had this confidence. Lan Qingyin's brows were tightly knitted and her face was as black as charcoal. The feeling of her life being controlled by someone else really made her unhappy to the extreme. She had always been the one controlling the lives of others. How could anyone control her? Unfortunately, she met this Bailey Hongzhuang. She was originally in an advantageous position, but in the end, she fell into a disadvantageous position. If you dare to take my life, my Lan clan will definitely not let you off, Lan Qingyin said fiercely. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but chuckle. Lan Qingyin, you said this in the Battle of Zhuolu. Do you think it's a threat? In this Battle of Zhuolu, it's not like the death of a successor hasn't happened before. Death is death. Naturally, there's no value. Once these words came out, Lan Qingyin's face turned black again. She found that this Bailey Hongzhuang was simply impervious to oil and salt. She couldn't be judged with common sense. While Bailey Hongzhuang and Lan Qingyan were fighting, Imo Yunjue and Ouyang Etian were also locked in battle. The more they fought, the more surprised Ouyang Etian was. Sure enough, as he expected, the heaven-devouring tower's young master was very powerful. In the process of fighting, he faintly felt that he was no match for him. Ouyang Etian was very clear about his own strength. It seemed that the heaven-devouring tower's strength was really not simple. Lan Xingyan taking the lead to start a fight with Limitless Palace didn't seem to be a good thing. Bang! Imo Yunjue punched Ouyang Etian. Ouyang Etian was hit by the punch carelessly. He groaned and retreated a few steps. His face was a little pale. Seeing this, Imo Yunjue once again dashed forward and attacked. After noticing Imo Yunjue's movements, Ouyang Etian also quickly retreated to avoid Imo Yunjue's attack. If he was hit by a few more punches, his combat effectiveness would be affected. Just as everyone was fighting in full swing, the ground suddenly began to tremble violently. It was as if an earthquake was happening, and it could collapse at any time. The sudden earthquake caused everyone to stop fighting. They carefully looked at the ground, afraid that something unexpected would happen. Could it be that the shock waves from the battle were so great that the space around the battle of Zhuolu fluctuated? Xiao Hei's eyes narrowed. With so many of them fighting at the same time, the shock waves from the battle were undoubtedly extremely shocking. The battlefield of the Battle of Zhuolu was a small world created by the various factions. If the energy that erupted from within was too great, it was not impossible for the small world to collapse. Chapter 2399. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the three beasties nodded. Logically speaking, this was indeed the case. If it's not the collapse of the space, then what is the reason? Xiao Hei was confused. The ground was cracking inch by inch and was undulating. There was no other explanation for this situation. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Lan Qingyan and the others. She found that Lan Qingyan and the others were also confused, cautiously observing the surrounding terrain, not knowing what had happened. What's going on? Why did this happen all of a sudden? This is too terrifying. I've never seen such a situation before. If the space collapses, I'm afraid all of us will die here, right? At this moment, all the cultivators focused their attention on this matter, and even their original hatred was temporarily forgotten. Let's leave first. Ouyang Etian's expression was solemn. He didn't know when the ground under his feet would collapse. It was too dangerous to continue staying here. It might be better to leave as far as possible. In the next moment, Ouyang Etian directly came to Lan Qingyan's side and immediately prepared to leave with her. Bailey Hongzhuang and Imo Yunjue glanced at each other. Apart from this method, they obviously didn't have any other suitable methods. However, just as everyone was about to leave, the ground suddenly collapsed. A formless energy enveloped everyone, and they fell into the ground without being able to resist at all. Suddenly, exclamations mixed with screams quickly resounded. Everyone was in a panic and didn't know what would happen next. Bailey Hongzhuang's face also showed a hint of panic. The situation in front of them was obviously beyond everyone's expectations. What did this sudden collapse mean? Fortunately, everyone didn't fall for long. After a while, everyone's feet touched the ground again. After everyone stepped on the ground again, the exclamations dissipated. The three beasties followed Bailey Hongzhuang closely. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at everything in front of her in shock. This was clearly an underground passage. Looking up at the sky, they didn't know when it had started, but they couldn't see the sky anymore. It was as if they had always been in this underground tunnel. The passageway was made of hard stones, but it didn't feel wet at all even though it was 100 meters underground. Not only that, the air inside didn't feel suffocating either. Seeing this scene, everyone's faces were filled with astonishment. If it weren't for the fact that they were absolutely certain of what they had come into contact with earlier, they would have thought that they were dreaming. Where's this place? A cultivator could not help but ask. Previously, they were only fighting. Why did they suddenly enter such a place? Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but look at each other. It was hard to imagine that there would be such a place in the Battle of Zhuolu. Could it be that they had triggered something during the battle? Lan Xinyan's already charcoal black face was dyed with a layer of gloominess at this moment. Today's events were really one wave after another, giving her no chance to catch her breath. It was really depressing. Bailey Hongzhuang was rather calm about all this. She had seen many things ever since she came to the Battle of Zhuolu. She guessed that this was another test. Chapter 2400. There were many people who had the same thoughts as Bailey Hongzhuang. This underground passage was obviously man-made. The major forces would never spend so much effort to create a useless underground passage for no reason. Therefore, there must be treasures here. One of the reasons why everyone participated in the Battle of Zhuolu was that there were many treasures here. The more treasures they obtained, the more room for improvement they would have. In their line of sight, this underground passage was deep and long. It was obvious that it covered a large area. The road behind had been blocked. Everyone could only go forward to have a chance of getting out. Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue looked at each other and immediately walked towards the passage. Since they were here, they might as well take things as they came. They wanted to see what was here. The cultivators of Limitless Palace and Shutian Pavilion followed closely behind. They believed that the Lan clan and Ouyang clan would not dare to launch a sneak attack at this time. After seeing the actions of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, Ouyang Yiqian also looked at Lan Xinyan beside him and said, "Xinyan, let's go too." Hearing this, Lan Xinyan nodded. There was no other way at the moment. Although, what she wanted the most now was to find a safe place to heal her injuries. Now that she had taken the elixir, her injuries had stopped. It was just that her appearance with a broken arm was too ugly. In addition to that miserable appearance, if others saw it, it would really be a stain on her, Lan Xinyan's, reputation. The four teams immediately moved forward together along the passage. Everyone's speed was not fast because no one knew if there were any traps here. Fortunately, everything was peaceful along the way. The length of this passage was obviously beyond everyone's expectations. Everyone just moved forward, and the atmosphere was extremely quiet. "Master, this place is so strange. Moreover, we fell into this underground passage without any warning. Do you think the other teams will be like us?" After seeing the astonishing length of this passage, Xiao Bai had a thought in her mind. Hearing Xiao Bai's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes slightly changed. This is not impossible. If that's really the case, then this situation will be interesting. Little White's eyes lit up. Didn't this mean that all of them were gathered together? Originally, they thought that they would have to go all the way to the center of the Battle of Zhuolu before they would meet. If everyone met under the guidance of this passageway, the situation would be even more exciting. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. The rules of the Battle of Zhuolu were different from what they had imagined. However, they would take it one step at a time. Soon, they would know everything about the situation. "Hongzhuang, you are now the young palace master of Limitless Palace. This person's fate really makes one sigh." Mo Yunjue's lips curled into a faint smile. When he sensed Bailey Hongzhuang's improvement in power, his heart was filled with amazement. Back then, the gap between his cultivation and Bailey Hongzhuang's was not small. Who would have thought that the gap had shrunk to such an extent now? It seemed that during this period of time, Bailey Hongzhuang had a fortuitous encounter in her cultivation. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. "That's right. Do you still remember the remains that we entered during the assessment? That was left behind by my master." Chapter 2401. Hongzhuang, your luck is indeed amazing. Mo Yunjue sighed. He knew that many people became the successor after a fortuitous encounter. However, Bailey Hongzhuang became the successor of Limitless Palace after entering the ruins during the assessment. This was extremely rare. There were many ruins during the assessment, but most of them were treasures left behind by experts to help cultivators increase their strength. This kind of successor selection could be said to be 1 in a million. To be able to encounter Bailey Hongzhuang, one could see how heaven-defying Bailey Hongzhuang's luck was. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. A lot of things are fated. She felt that the fate between her master and herself was predestined. It was because of the rainbow pearl. Yunjue, thank you so much for today. If you didn't appear in time, we would be in danger this time. With our friendship, I would naturally help if I happened to arrive. I can only say that I came at the right time. His handsome and resolute face rippled with a faint and gentle smile. Only when he saw Bailey Hongzhuang, Mo Yunjue would not be stingy with his smile. No matter what, you saved us, especially in front of Lan Qingyan. I will remember this kindness in my heart. Her clear black and white eyes flashed with sincerity. Every time she saw Mo Yunjue spare no effort to help her, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was always filled with gratitude and guilt. She remembered all the kindness Mo Yunjue gave her. However, for a man like Mo Yunjue, what chance did she have to help him? She didn't know, but she felt that no matter what she did, she would not be able to repay him, because Mo Yunjue gave her too much. Mo Yunjue looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's bright eyes and understood what she was thinking. He just wanted to do something for Bailey Hongzhuang and didn't want Bailey Hongzhuang to feel burdened. To him, as long as he could still do something, it would be great. Hongzhuang, haven't you seen Di Beichen yet? Mo Yunjue immediately changed the topic. He didn't want Bailey Hongzhuang to focus too much on this matter. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head with a helpless look on her face. She had originally wanted to meet up with Di Beichen after the Battle of Zhuolu. That way, even if they met an allied team, they wouldn't be much of a threat. Unfortunately, things didn't go as she wished. She didn't see any trace of Di Beichen along the way. Instead, she met up with the Lan family team so quickly. However, all in all, teaching Lan Qingyan a lesson and taking away the Lan family cultivator's identity token was a good thing. The Battle of Zhuolu covers a large area, and it's completely random. It's not easy to find a team. Mo Yunjue spoke slowly. However, we are following this underground tunnel towards the center of the Battle of Zhuolu. We might meet Tiangang Sec's team at any time. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. Looks like we have the same idea. Mo Yunjue nodded. This underground tunnel is very long. It's obviously leading us to a place. That means we can only go deeper and not in the opposite direction. Thinking about it, the other teams might be in the same tunnel as us. Chapter 2402. Because of the relationship between Bailey Hongzhuang and Lan Qingyan, the team was surprisingly quiet along the way. Even if everyone had some guesses in their hearts, they still lowered their voices, unwilling to let the enemy know. Lan Qingyan and Ouyang Etian kept a certain distance from Bailey Hongzhuang and Lan Qingyan. Ouyang Etian, looking at this situation, is it possible that Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue are a couple? Lan Qingyan's gaze was locked on the two figures in front of her. In her heart, she was 1,000 times unwilling to see such a situation happen. Hearing this, Ouyang Etian thought for a moment and said, "It's very possible. Looking at their appearance, they should have known each other for a long time. If they didn't know each other for a long time, Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue wouldn't have such a tacit understanding. What's more, according to Lan Qingyan, Bailey Hongzhuang had just become the young palace master of Limitless Palace. He felt that it was very possible that they had already known each other before Bailey Hongzhuang became the young palace master of Limitless Palace. Although Limitless Palace hasn't been established for a long time, its strength isn't weak. The union between Mo Yunjue and Bailey Hongzhuang shouldn't be hindered. It was precisely because it hadn't been established for a long time that there was no conflict between Limitless Palace and Shitian Pavilion. If the two were the same mind, then it should be a happy thing for everyone to be together. In addition, whether it was Bailey Hongzhuang or Mo Yunjue, they were both extremely outstanding. There was nothing to nitpick about when the two were together. Listening to Ouyang Etienne's words, Lan Qingyin couldn't help but bite her lips. The dissatisfaction in her heart was about to drown her. She would rather be together with Mo Yunjue than let Bailey Hongzhuang win over her. However, when Mo Yunjue appeared previously, his gaze fell on Bailey Hongzhuang from beginning to end. He almost didn't even look at her. It really angered her to death. Even if Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance was more outstanding than hers, she, Lan Qingyin, was not someone who could be easily ignored, right? However, from the beginning until now, Mo Yunjue only had eyes for two people, Bailey Hongzhuang and Ouyang Etienne. She was completely ignored. Ouyang Etienne looked at Lan Qingyin's constantly changing expression and guessed the latter's thoughts. He and Lan Qingyin had known each other for so many years, and he had long understood Lan Qingyin's narrow-mindedness. Bailey Hongzhuang was always in the limelight, so Lan Qingyin must have been angry to death. However, he couldn't say anything in this situation. After all, they were enemies with Bailey Hongzhuang. As the group gradually moved forward, four tunnels suddenly appeared in front of them. Seeing this scene, everyone's faces were filled with astonishment. They did not understand what was going on. 4 paths? Does this mean that our 4 teams will have to split up? A cultivator could not help but ask. 4 teams for paths. It was as if they had been allocated beforehand. After Bailey Hongzhuang saw the 4 paths, her beautiful eyes flashed with a wisp of wisdom. It seemed that they had come here long ago. Mo Yunjue took a few steps forward and saw that there was a small plaque hanging at the side of the path. On the plaque, there was a simple line of words. 1 path for each team. Simple and crude, it gave everyone the following directions. However, they couldn't predict what would happen after entering the path. Chapter 24:03. He originally wanted to use this opportunity to spend more time with Bailey Hongzhuang. At least before Di Baichen appeared, he could protect Bailey Hongzhuang. However, he didn't expect that this underground passage would have such a situation. Every team had to be separated. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. We will definitely meet again. Using this passage to separate us, there must be a test left for us. As long as we pass the test, I'm afraid everyone will gather in one place. After experiencing many adventures, Bailey Hongzhuang had a certain understanding of these situations and routines. She was almost certain that this was the final result. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Mo Yunjue's smile widened. I didn't expect that in such a short time, you would have a certain understanding of this test. Bailey Hongzhuang was full of smiles. Although the test set by the Battle of Zhuolu had a certain degree of difficulty, it shouldn't be life-threatening. After all, every force wouldn't know if it would be their team that would encounter this danger in the end. Therefore, it should only be a matter of whether they would get it or not. At this moment, Lan Qingyin and Ouyang Etienne had also walked to the front of the passage. After seeing the words written on the plaque, their expressions changed a little. Among them, Lan Qingyin's expression was the most unsightly. Now that she had fallen into such a situation, it wasn't easy for her to meet up with Ouyang Etienne. With Ouyang Etienne by her side to take care of her, she didn't have to worry about danger. However, now they were separated. Once they encountered other teams, wouldn't their Lan family's team be at a disadvantage? Thinking of this, Lan Qingyin couldn't help but glare hatefully at Bailey Hongzhuang. If it wasn't for Bailey Hongzhuang, how could she have fallen into such a situation? Bailey Hongzhuang naturally also noticed Lan Qingyin's hateful gaze, but she simply couldn't be bothered to pay attention to it. Her hatred for Lan Qingyin was much deeper than Lan Qingyin's hatred for her at this moment. Qingyin, it seems that we can only separate for the time being, Ouyang Etienne said slowly. In fact, he was also a little worried about Lan Qingyin. They didn't know what kind of test there was in this passage. No matter what, Lan Qingyin was still his future wife. He didn't want anything to happen to Lan Qingyin. Hearing this, even though Lan Qingyin was somewhat unwilling, there was nothing she could do. After all, this was the rule of the underground passage. Hongzhuang, which tunnel do you want to enter? Mo Yunjue asked Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the 4 paths in front of her. She didn't care which path she chose. According to her judgment, these 4 paths should only be used to separate the 4 teams. The test should be the same. Therefore, Bailey Hongzhuang directly pointed to the second path and said, "Our limitless palace will take this path." Yinju, I'll see you after we get out of the tunnel. Mo Yunju nodded. All right, be careful. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang made this choice, Lan Qingyan also stood in front of that path. Clearly, she was also interested in this passage. Lan Qingyan couldn't help but glare at Bailey Hongzhuang. She felt that this Bailey Hongzhuang was deliberately going against her. Bailey Hongzhuang coldly glanced at Lan Qingyan. Get out of the way. Chapter 2404. Lan Qingyan stood blankly in the same place, watching Bailey Hongzhuang disappear in front of her. Her face could be said to be extremely ugly. Bailey Hongzhuang was too arrogant. However, when she reacted, Bailey Hongzhuang had already disappeared. She couldn't help but look at Mo Yunjue. However, Mo Yunjue ignored Lan Qingyan from beginning to end, as if he didn't see Lan Qingyan's ugly expression at all. He coldly led the team and left. Lan Qingyan could only look at Ouyang Etian. All the humiliation she had suffered in her life was condensed to this day. Ouyang Etian, you must avenge me. Lan Qingyan stomped the ground with her feet. Where was her usual noble appearance? She only wanted someone to help her teach Bailey Hongzhuang a lesson. Otherwise, her heart would definitely not be balanced. Ouyang Etian saw this and felt helpless. He immediately nodded and said, Qingyan, don't worry. After leaving this passage, I will definitely avenge you. Following Ouyang Etian's words, Lan Qingyan's eyes were suddenly filled with gratitude and resentment towards Bailey Hongzhuang. Then I'll leave it to you. After Limitless Palace's disciples walked into the passage, they recalled the words Bailey Hongzhuang said to Lan Qingyan, get out of the way. They couldn't help but praise in their hearts. It seemed that young Palace Master was also not an ordinary domineering person. With Lan Qingyan's identity, perhaps no one could make her suffer like this. Thinking of this, everyone felt a burst of joy. Lan Qingyan's aura was still weak in front of their young Palace Master. I don't know where this passage will lead to. This is really strange. Yan Aoshuang's face was filled with disbelief. From the time they inexplicably fell into the passage until now, they still felt that everything was like a dream. Now, there is no other choice. We can only take one step at a time. Maybe it will be another test like what we experienced before. Long Xianjing was very calm. His thoughts were the same as the young Palace Masters. There was no point in worrying, so it was better to just calmly walk down this path. With all 4 teams here, it was unlikely that they would be completely wiped out. Young Palace Master, do you know the young master of the Heaven Slaughter Tower? When only Bailey Hongzhuang and her group were left, the curiosity in the hearts of the Limitless Palace's disciples emerged. The young master of the Heaven Slaughter Pavilion was an extremely mysterious figure. If they had not had the opportunity to see him today, they would not have known the true appearance of the Heaven Slaughter Pavilion's young master. They had clearly seen Mo Yunjue's attitude towards the young Palace Master. It was obvious that he had feelings for the young Palace Master. If the young Palace Master could really be together with Mo Yunjue, they felt that it would be a good thing. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. We've known each other for several years. Thinking back to when they first met, she was only a student of the Azure Water School. Now, she was already the young Palace Master of Limitless Palace. In these few years, she had experienced too many things. Yan Aoshuang sized up Bailey Hongzhuang, then asked tentatively, Young Palace Master, is he your sweetheart? As soon as these words came out, the team could not help but burst into laughter. Chapter 2405. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the gossipy hearts of the people in the team and felt a burst of helplessness in her heart. Sure enough, no matter when, everyone would inevitably be curious about this kind of thing. In order to avoid misunderstandings, Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head and said, "No, this answer was obviously beyond everyone's expectations." Everyone felt that this was a definite answer, but they didn't expect the young palace master to deny it. However, the feelings that Mo Yunjue showed to the young palace master were clearly not fake. What's more, Mo Yunjue said that the young palace master's business was his business. If he didn't care about someone very much, how could Mo Yunjue say such a thing? Everyone looked at each other, but soon everyone had already figured out the reason. It was likely that Mo Yunjue had feelings for the young palace master, but the young palace master had no feelings for Mo Yunjue. However, for an outstanding man like Mo Yunjue to not be moved by the young palace master, this was really amazing. Yin Aoshuang couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang. However, their young palace master was also an exceptionally outstanding existence. Lan Qingyan was an extremely famous figure among the younger generation of successors, but now she had suffered such a big loss in the hands of the young palace master. It seemed that the young palace master was a woman who could be compared with Lan Qingyan. Actually, I think that Ouyang Yiqian is not as good as Mo Yunjue. Isn't that so? Ouyang Yiqian was still very polite when talking to Mo Yunjue, but Mo Yunjue completely ignored him. This can be seen from this point. If the young palace master and Mo Yunjue can be together, it would be a perfect match made in heaven. Everyone whispered. The Shurtian Pavilion was already a very extraordinary existence in the Shengxian continent. Thinking about it, even in the entire Shengxian continent, there was probably no one more outstanding than Mo Yunjue. You don't have to worry about it. Our master already has a sweetheart. Xiaohei saw that everyone was concerned about this matter and couldn't help but speak up. Mo Yunjue was indeed a very outstanding man, but Di Beichen was not worse than Mo Yunjue. In terms of feelings, there was no comparison at all. It felt that its master and Di Beichen were a match made in heaven. At least, the tacit understanding between them was unparalleled. So many years of waiting and companionship was not something that ordinary people could do. Everyone was stunned when they heard Xiaohei's words. They looked at Xiaohei in astonishment. The young palace master already had a sweetheart at her heart? Who was the young master's sweetheart? Young's young. However, Xiaohei didn't intend to continue after arousing everyone's curiosity. Anyway, it wouldn't take long for everyone to find out. Seeing that Xiaohei had already closed its mouth, although everyone was very curious, it was not good to continue asking. It would be too gossipy. Bailey Hongzhuang led everyone forward, but found that the passage seemed to be endless, and there were no signs of danger. It was really a little confusing. Master, it seems that this passage is really going to take us to the center of the Battle of Zhuolu. Chapter 24:06. Bailey Hongzhuang's delicate and perfect face was filled with thoughts. After a moment of silence, she slowly said, "Don't be impatient. Maybe the major forces arranged this tunnel to test our patience." To a cultivator, patience was an extremely important factor. In the process of cultivation, a cultivator had to be able to endure loneliness and also had to have enough patience. Neither of these were dispensable. The underground tunnel in front of them was deep and had no destination. It was exhausting everyone's patience bit by bit. Perhaps this was one of the great rewards they had gained from coming to the underground tunnel. After hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the people who were originally slightly irritated gradually calmed down. Now that the initiative was not in their hands, they could only bide their time. It would be terrible if he was the one who panicked first. Finally, after 6 hours, 10 passageways suddenly appeared in front of everyone. Seeing this, everyone could not help but be stunned for a moment. Are the 10 of us going to be separated? Everyone could not help but be dumbfounded. First, the 4 teams were separated. Now, the 10 of them were separated. What was the purpose of this? Isn't the Battle of Zhuolu supposed to be fought according to the teams? Why are we being separated now? Pei Yifun's face was full of confusion. This situation was simply illogical. If the whole team moved together, no matter what danger they encountered, they would still have some confidence in dealing with it. However, if all of them were to split up, the danger would greatly increase. Once they encountered other teams, they would be nothing more than sitting ducks. If they were not careful, they would be wiped out. Long Xianjing and Bailey Hongzhuang looked at each other. Their faces were dyed with a solemn light. This situation was indeed beyond everyone's expectations. Currently, this is the only path in front of us. I'm afraid there is no other way but to continue down this path. Long Xianjing said in a deep voice. Now that they were on the chopping block, they simply did not have any other choice. Moreover, they were now hundreds of meters underground. If they wanted to return to the surface, even with their strength, it was impossible to do so. Everyone's heart sank. Everyone was a little nervous about the unknown that they would encounter next. Bailey Hongzhuang's thoughts were also a little complicated. She couldn't make an accurate judgment at the moment. In my opinion, there's no danger in this passage. It's fine for us to stay here for a while. Why don't we take advantage of this opportunity to consume the pills first and increase our strength a little? The danger we will face later will also be reduced by a little. Bailey Hongzhuang took out some pills from her primal chaos ring. If it wasn't for the sudden appearance of Lan Qingyin and the rest, they would have already started absorbing the pills. Although the process was full of twists and turns, the medicinal pill was still in their hands. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone's complicated emotions calmed down a little. Since they couldn't figure it out, they would just ignore it for the time being. Bailey Hongzhuang distributed the pills to everyone. Although there are no other teams here, but to be on the safe side, 5 of us will take the pills at a time, and the other 5 will be responsible for guarding. Everyone nodded. Given the current situation, it was best to be careful. Chapter 2407. Thank you, young palace master. Everyone couldn't hide the excitement on their faces. If they hadn't followed the young palace master, it would have been impossible for them to obtain this pill with their own strength. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a faint smile. This is the result of everyone's hard work. There's no need for thanks. To me, you are all my companions. Everything that we obtain in this battle of Zhuolu belongs to each and every one of us. I also hope that everyone has the same thoughts as me. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't consider herself a bad person, but at the same time, she wasn't a good person either. She was only good to those who were good to her and bad to those who were bad to her. This was her view of right and wrong. She was never stingy towards her friends. It was a very good experience for her teammates to improve together. As soon as these words came out, everyone felt a warmth in their hearts. The young palace master really treated them as teammates, and not as chess pieces that would risk their lives for her. It was because of this difference that they were willing to do so many things for the young palace master. Bailey Hongzhuang chose to wait for the other 5 disciples to take the pill before she took it. After all, the 10 of them would be separated. The more the weaker disciples could improve, the more chances they would have to survive. For Bailey Hongzhuang, she had her own life-saving means, so there was no need to rush. While the disciples were absorbing the pill, Bailey Hongzhuang also sized up the 10 tunnels in front of her. These 10 tunnels looked exactly the same as the one they had taken before. There was no difference at all. Moreover, every passage looked the same, and there was no way to differentiate between them. What is the meaning of these tunnels separating us? Bailey Hongzhuang's brows were filled with deep thoughts. This arrangement was a little different. Could it be that this test is targeted at individuals, so we have to be separated? I don't know if only our team has encountered such a situation, or if the other teams are in the same situation as us. Bailey Hongzhuang pondered. Unfortunately, they had no way of knowing the situation of the other teams. The 3 beasties followed beside Bailey Hongzhuang and were speechless at the situation before them. They really couldn't understand what was going on. Their master was undoubtedly the smartest of them all. If they couldn't even understand their master, then they most likely wouldn't be able to either. Therefore, they just stood there quietly, not knowing if their master would be able to figure out. Long Xianjing, Yin Aoshuang and the others were also observing the situation of the passageways. The last time they saw the 4 passageways, there was a hint on the signboard. However, the passageway in front of them did not give them any hints at all, which made them feel helpless. Young Palace Master, what would happen if all of us entered the same passage? Yin Aoshuang said slowly. She believed that if other teams were in the same situation as them, there would definitely be many teams that would make the same choice. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. I'm not sure, but I think the purpose of this passage is to separate them, because each team has 10 people. This setup was a little too obvious. Chapter 2408. If one of our cultivators is left alone, it will be much more dangerous. Long Xianjing also agreed with Yin Aoshuang's idea. Although he had heard that there were many tests in the Battle of Zhuolu, he had never heard of the idea of splitting up. It was a little too strange. Bailey Hongzhuang thought about what the two of them had said, then nodded and said, after everyone has absorbed the medicinal energy, we can give it a try. If the group could not be separated, that would be great. However, Bailey Hongzhuang had a premonition that they would be separated. Although there was no reason for this premonition, it had always been very accurate. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang had agreed, Long Xianjing and Yin Aoshuang were relieved. Only when everyone was together, this was the safest way. After Pei Yifan and the others had taken a pill, they felt a surge of energy spreading through their bodies. Then it began to fill their cells, increasing their physical strength. This process was painful, but everyone had already mentally prepared themselves before taking the pill. This kind of pain was something that they could endure. In the previous battle, everyone had more or less injuries on their bodies. Some of them were even more serious. Although after taking the pill, these injuries were gradually recovering, but now that their bodies were filled with energy, they could feel that their injuries were quickly recovering. Long Xianjing and the others observed for a while and found that there were no clues left around the tunnel. After that, they sat down to heal their injuries. The black snake blood ginseng's energy was not small. Everyone was using the black snake blood ginseng's energy to increase their strength. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang had predicted, many cultivators had completed their breakthroughs after taking the pill. Although they were now in the underground tunnel, there was still a lot of yuan qi in the air, so they did not encounter any obstacles in the process of breaking through. Among them, Li Yongbing was the fastest to break through. Ever since he had come to the Battle of Zhuolu, Li Yongbing had been the one who had been injured frequently. He had used all his strength in battles, and his potential had been completely stimulated. Now, with the help of the pill, it could be said that he had broken through quickly. After Li Yongbing had broken through, another cultivator who had been waiting also began to take the pill. Young Palace Master, the effect of your pill is really amazing. I actually broke through directly. Li Yongbing looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in amazement. One could see the admiration he had for Bailey Hongzhuang in his black eyes. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. The black snake blood ginseng is a treasure, and you're on the verge of a breakthrough. It's expected that you'll break through. Li Yongbing waved her hand. Then I have to thank young Palace Master for helping me. If he didn't have the help of this pill, it would take a long time for him to improve just by relying on his cultivation. He could tell that their young palace lord was a kind-hearted person. On the one hand, he had spared no effort to help all of them. On the other hand, he was a little embarrassed to accept their gratitude. However, they remembered all of this in their hearts. Bailey Hongzhuang also took the elixir. After seeing Lan Qingyan and Ouyang Etian's strength, she also knew that there was still a big gap between her strength and theirs. Chapter 2409. By the time Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest had finished absorbing the medicinal effects, it was already 3 days later. Bailey Hongzhuang's physical strength had increased, but her cultivation had not broken through. Bailey Hongzhuang was not surprised by this. She had just broken through 2 levels. If she had broken through again, then the speed of her breakthrough would be too fast. However, her strength had still increased, but it had not reached the point of breakthrough. Young Palace Master, which passage should we take? Yin Aoshuang looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Now, their entire team followed Bailey Hongzhuang's lead. No matter what Bailey Hongzhuang chose, they would not have any objections. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the identical passages in front of her and said, "Let's take the middle one." However, just as everyone was about to enter the same passage, something strange happened. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest suddenly realized that under their feet there were different colored halos, and in the opposite passage there were also different colored halos. Seeing this scene, everyone could not help but be stunned. This situation was a little strange. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the halos, and then looked at the color of the cave. She knew that her premonition was not wrong. Sure enough, this passage was to separate each and every one of them. It seems that the color of the halos under our feet will determine which passage we will enter. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. As the voice of Bailey Hongzhuang fell, everyone looked at it carefully and found that the situation was indeed the case. It was exactly the same. What exactly is this thing? Why must all of us be separated? Yin Aoshuang's face was filled with dissatisfaction. This feeling of not being in control of everything was really uncomfortable. This should have been set up from the beginning. I'm afraid that even if we resist, it will be useless. Long Xuanjing's expression was a little helpless. The situation could not be more obvious. Let me see if it has to be like this. Yin Aoshuang's feet were yellow halos. She directly walked towards the passage shining with red light, wanting to see if she could enter. However, when Yin Aoshuang came to the front of the red passage, she found that there seemed to be a layer of invisible barrier, making it impossible for her to enter. Yin Aoshuang tried for a long time, but found that it was useless. She could only helplessly give up. As expected, there is no other way. Yin Aoshuang spread out her hands. At this moment, she had completely given up. Everyone's mood was also extremely complicated. Next, they would have to explore by themselves. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at everyone's complicated thoughts and said slowly, "Since the situation is like this now, we can only go in and check it out. I believe that it shouldn't be too dangerous. Everyone, be careful. Once we get out, we'll find a way to gather." Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone nodded. This was indeed the only way. "Young Palace Master, you must be careful." Long Xianjing looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a dignified expression. As disciples of Limitless Palace, it was not a big deal if there was danger. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was the young Palace Master. If there was danger, they would not have the face to return to Limitless Palace. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. "Don't worry, I'll be fine." Chapter 24:10. Bailey Hongzhuang walked straight into the red circle of light that had lit up beneath her feet. The three beasts followed closely behind Bailey Hongzhuang. It was a good thing that the circle of light only restricted cultivators and did not restrict the entry of contracted beasts. After Bailey Hongzhuang walked into the tunnel, the circle of light beneath her feet dissipated. The tunnel in front of them was just like the tunnel that they had walked through previously. There were no changes at all. If Bailey Hongzhuang had not sensed the minute changes in the terrain, she would have thought that they had all remained in the same place and had not moved forward at all. After all, she had experienced the illusion of being frozen in place before. "Master, are we going to keep walking forward without knowing when we'll reach the end?" Xiao He was completely speechless at the fact that the environment had not changed at all. There shouldn't be any other tunnels after this. We're the only ones left. Was there something wrong with the fellow who had arranged for this tunnel? How could he have built this thing that we don't even know what it's for? Isn't it too confusing? Xiaobai could not help but complain. It was too boring to just walk around like this. In comparison, Baisher had remained silent the entire time. It could not understand such a strange and brain-draining matter, so it might as well remain silent. Bailey Hongzhuang placed Xiao He on her hand and stroked Xiao He's head with one hand. That soft fur felt very comfortable to touch. Of course, Bailey Hongzhuang's main point was not to stroke Xiaohei's fur. She was merely pondering over the true meaning of this tunnel in the process of stroking Xiaohei's fur. As they walked, Bailey Hongzhuang's pitch-black phoenix eyes suddenly flashed with a strange light. It was as if she had suddenly understood something and stopped in her tracks. Xiaohei had been enjoying Bailey Hongzhuang's stroking with narrowed eyes when she saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had suddenly stopped. A puzzled light flashed in her eyes. "Master, what's the matter? I've suddenly thought of a possibility." The gazes of the three beasties gathered on Bailey Hongzhuang, and they asked in unison, "What possibility?" Bailey Hongzhuang continued to move forward, but her mind was full of thoughts. "Do you all remember that Master once said that the Battle of Zhuolu is not only a competition of team results, but also an individual's results?" The three beasts nodded. Yes, they were a little surprised when they heard this. But what was the problem? That's right. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a confident smile. Previously, we had always been together as a team. Even when it came to snatching identity tokens, it was done as a team. If that was the case, how could they compete in individual strength? Now that we're all spread out, we can naturally compete. Previously, Bailey Hongzhuang was also wondering about this because if the entire team was together from the beginning to the end, many successors would hold the identity cards of the entire team in their hands when checking their individual strength. Since that was the case, what difference was there between this and a competition of team strength? Now, there was an explanation for all of this. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's explanation, the three beasties finally understood. Chapter 24:11. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded her head. "If my judgment isn't wrong, that's very likely the case." The three beasties thought about it carefully. The more they thought about it, the more they felt that Bailey Hongzhuang's words made sense. It was obvious that this passage was deliberately set up by someone. They spent so much effort to separate everyone. Other than this reason, there was no other reason. Thinking up to here, the three beasties couldn't help but give Bailey Hongzhuang a thumbs up. "Master, you're really too awesome. You can actually think of this point." Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up. Everything still depends on the outcome. After Bailey Hongzhuang continued to move forward for 2 hours, suddenly, her line of sight widened. A huge light screen appeared in front of her. Within the light screen, there was actually a martial arts stage. Looking at this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang was even more certain that her judgment wasn't wrong. The outcome was indeed as she had expected. On the opposite side of the martial arts stage, there was another light screen. It was obvious that her opponent should have appeared from that light screen. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly moved forward and prepared to walk into the light screen. However, she realized that there was an invisible barrier blocking her from entering the light screen. There was no way for her to enter it. Looking at this, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't continue to try. It seemed that the cultivator on the opposite side hadn't appeared yet. That was why she couldn't enter the light screen. Since that was the case, Bailey Hongzhuang directly found a place to cultivate at the side. Everyone's speed was different. If they needed to break through or treat their injuries midway, their time would naturally be delayed. However, as Bailey Hongzhuang cultivated here, she realized that the elemental energy here was extremely dense. It was very beneficial for a cultivator's cultivation. Previously, our colors were divided according to strength. I think my opponent should be the successor of another power. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly thought and said. Previously, when those light circles appeared, she had paid special attention to them. It was obviously related to strength. Thinking about it, Long Xianjing was the second strongest existence in Limitless Palace. The person he met should be the second strongest cultivator. If Yulin Feng knew about Bailey Hongzhuang's guess, he would be surprised to find that Bailey Hongzhuang's guess was shockingly accurate. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately began to cultivate. If the other party was a guy like Ouyang Yitian, it would be really difficult for her to deal with him with her strength. She had to work hard to raise her strength by another level. This way, she would have more confidence in battle. Fortunately, Lan Xingyan was not here. She could use the power of the Rainbow God Pearl. With her various tricks and the cooperation of the three beasts, it would not be a problem for her to fight someone of a higher level. Of course, this also depended on how much stronger the other party was compared to her. If he was too strong, she could only fight with her life on the line. After Bailey Hongzhuang's reminder, the three beasts also understood that the battle they were about to face was not simple. Immediately, they also worked hard to cultivate. The next day, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly felt a wave coming from the light screen door. She saw that the light screen door that was originally shining with red light suddenly had ripples like water. Taking a closer look, the light screen door on the opposite side also had the same ripples. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood. It seemed that the opponent had arrived. Chapter 24:12. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly got up and walked towards the door of the light screen. The three beasts followed closely behind her. In this kind of battle, contracted beasts were the default existence. As expected, Bailey Hongzhuang smoothly walked through the door of the light screen, and the figure on the other side gradually revealed itself. Bailey Hongzhuang did not recognize the other party, but her sharp eyes saw the other party's identity card, Wang Yujing of the Wang family. The Wang family was also an aristocratic family of cultivators. They were not weak, but Bailey Hongzhuang had never come into contact with anyone from the Wang family. This Wang Yujing in front of her was obviously the successor of the Wang family. Bailey Hongzhuang sized him up slightly and knew that the other party's strength was not simple. After Wang Yujing saw Bailey Hongzhuang, he was obviously shocked. He had some understanding of the successors of various large forces, but he was completely unfamiliar with this woman in front of him. After exiting the door of the light screen, they arrived at the tournament stage. The two figures immediately appeared on the tournament stage. At this moment, a red ripple appeared between Bailey Hongzhuang and Wang Yujing. There was a row of words written on the ripple. Tournament rules. The winner will obtain the other party's identity card, but cannot take the other party's life. The loser will leave, and the winner will continue to wait. Concise and comprehensive, it also told Bailey Hongzhuang and Wang Yujing that this tournament was imperative. Looks like this is an elimination round. After Wang Yujing saw the small words, he could not help but chuckle. Even if he did not understand what was going on previously, he should have understood after seeing this. A light of understanding flashed across Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes. Obviously, the winner would stay here and fight with the other winners on the tournament stage. Once they lost, they would probably leave this underground tunnel. Cultivators would use this method to obtain the identity card, but they would not lose their lives. This was an excellent guarantee. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did not know that this rule only existed among the heirs. It did not exist among ordinary cultivators. Since the reward for this competition is to obtain an identity card, I wonder what the outcome would be if it was someone who had already lost their identity card. Bailey Hongzhuang muttered to herself. Lan Qingyin's identity card had already fallen into her hands. As such, what could Lan Qingyin use to participate in the competition? If she didn't have an identity token, then wouldn't the other party gain nothing from defeating her? Wang Yujing was obviously not in a hurry to fight. They needed to figure out the situation first. If you don't have an identity token, you shouldn't be qualified to participate in the competition, Wang Yujing said slowly. This kind of competition is fair. Since they will leave once they lose, those without identity cards should have already determined that they will lose from the very beginning. They should not have come here at all. Although he didn't know the real answer, Wang Yujing was extremely certain when he said this sentence. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. That's possible. If it was really like this, then what would happen to Lan Qingyin after she entered this underground tunnel? In fact, Lan Qingyin was also extremely depressed. She had been walking nonstop, and this tunnel seemed to have no end. It was simply exhausting all of her patience. Chapter 24:13. In a short period of time, Bailey Hongzhuang and Wang Yujing had already understood everything. This place was to give them a fair chance to fight. Putting aside many uncertain factors, there would definitely not be a third party in this battle. They also didn't have to worry about the situation of the mantis stalking the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. It could be said that this place allowed the cultivators to display their full strength. I'm the Wang clan's young master, Wang Yujing. May I know who you are? Wang Yujing sized up Bailey Hongzhuang for a moment. Although he already knew that Bailey Hongzhuang's name and that she was from Limitless Palace from her identity tablet, he didn't know what was her identity in Limitless Palace. In the previous few battles for supremacy, Limitless Palace had sent their disciples to participate. However, when he saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had an extraordinary bearing, he had some doubts in his heart. I'm Limitless Palace's young palace master, Bailey Hongzhuang. Nice to meet you. Bailey Hongzhuang also knew the deeper meaning behind Wang Yujing's question. Although they were about to be opponents, there was no enmity between Limitless Palace and Wang clan. Therefore, she was very polite when she spoke. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's answer, Wang Yujing couldn't help but be surprised. After that, he revealed a look of understanding. So that's the case. Sorry for the disrespect. Wang Yujing cupped his hands and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a brighter gaze. He didn't expect Limitless Palace's young palace master to be such a beauty. It was really unexpected. Young palace master Bailey, since we're already at this stage, why don't we exchange some pointers? Please. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and Wang Yujing seemed to be in a fighting stance at the same time. They weren't people who liked to waste time. Now that all the arrangements were made, there was no meaning in wasting time here. The winner still needed to continue, and the loser should leave this place. The three beasties took advantage of the situation and stood behind Bailey Hongzhuang. This was also a chance for them to perform. Their master's age meant that they were at a disadvantage in this battle, so they had to do their best. After all, this was the first time Master had appeared in front of everyone as the young palace master. If he performed well, his reputation would undoubtedly be much better. Wang Yujing also had his own contracted beast. It was a Utilion with red fur all over its body. It was huge and had a majestic aura. Normally, this U-Tiger was Wang Yujing's mount. No matter where it went, it would always attract the attention and envy of many people. Yu Husher also came up behind Wang Yujing, but when Wang Yujing saw the three contracted beasts behind Bailey Hongzhuang, he couldn't help but look surprised. The white demonic beast seemed to be quite capable. Although it wasn't as impressive as Yu Husher, he could tell that it wasn't simple. However, why did Bailey Hongzhuang bring the other two little fellows that looked like pets? The most important thing was that every cultivator only had one contract beast. What was the use of Bailey Hongzhuang having two more? This situation was a little strange. However, Wang Yujing didn't take it to heart. As the young master of the Wang family, he had seen many people and things. Many people would have some strange fetishes. Although this action seemed a little strange, it wasn't that hard to accept. Chapter 24:14. The battle broke out in an instant. Wang Yujing and Bailey Hongzhuang's origin energy surged out of their bodies, and a surging aura spread out. Blue Realm Level 5. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately determined Wang Yujing's cultivation level, but the result was undoubtedly much better than she had expected. She was worried that Wang Yujing was at Blue Realm Level 7, like Lan Qingyan and the others. If that was the case, the situation would be a little difficult. When she was fighting with Lan Qingyan, she immediately used her strongest move. Because the gap between their cultivation levels was too big, if it wasn't for Baishu's sneak attack, it would have been very difficult for her to defeat Lan Qingyan. If Wang Yujing had also reached Blue Realm Level 7, it would be equally difficult for her to win. However, since he was at Blue Realm Level 5, it would be much easier. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang's whole body relaxed a bit. After all, there were strong and weak cultivators participating in the Battle of Zhuolu. Lan Qingyan and the others were considered to be extremely powerful among the many teams in the Battle of Zhuolu. When Wang Yujing felt that Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation was only at the third level of the blue realm, his whole body relaxed, and his eyes were filled with a smile. Previously, he thought that Bailey Hongzhuang looked very young, so he was afraid that her strength wouldn't be very strong. Blue Realm Level 3, this battle was definitely going to be a win. Bailey Hongzhuang took a step forward, and without a word, the energy of the blood aura field exploded. The blood aura field was the most effective in a battle of a higher level. Moreover, Wang Yujing's strength was only 2 levels higher than hers. It was not difficult for her to suppress him. Wang Yujing, who was originally very happy, changed his expression when he saw the blood aura field. He was filled with indescribable shock and astonishment. Boom! Wang Yujing felt as if a mountain was pressing down on him. In a short moment, his strength had been forcibly suppressed to Blue Realm Level 3, the same cultivation level as Bailey Hongzhuang. Wang Yujing couldn't help but be slightly flabbergasted when she saw this. The advantage in cultivation actually vanished just like that. Bailey Hongzhuang did not give Wang Yujing any time to be stunned. Her figure flashed, and her right hand clenched into a fist. She struck out fiercely at Wang Yujing. Bang! Wang Yujing also punched out to block Bailey Hongzhuang. However, when Wang Yujing's fist came into contact with Bailey Hongzhuang's fist, the ominous feeling in his heart intensified. A heart-wrenching pain came from his right hand. It was as if a flame had burned his arm, and it continued to burn along the wound. This was the first time that Bailey Hongzhuang used the power of the icy cold fire. She only felt that when she was fighting, using the icy cold fire to wrap her fist was undoubtedly a very convenient way of fighting. Wang Yujing quickly retreated a few steps. When he saw the wound on his hand, the way he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang changed. He underestimated Bailey Hongzhuang. Even though this woman's cultivation level was only Blue Realm Level 3, her trump card was really amazing. The blood aura field was something that none of the heirs except for Debachin had. He did not expect that there was a second person who had it now. The icy cold fire was also an extremely precious treasure. Even as the heir of the Wang clan, he did not have the ability to own it. Bailey Hongzhuang had actually obtained it at such a young age. Could it be? Wuji Palace's foundation was so powerful. Chapter 2415. Bailey Hongzhuang wanted to end the battle as soon as possible. No one knew when the next battle would end. Hence, the sooner she finished this battle, the more time she would have to recover her battle strength. Wang Yujing saw how quick Bailey Hongzhuang's attacks were and did not dare to be negligent. Bailey Hongzhuang's battle strength was clearly much stronger than her cultivation. He had been blinded by this fact from the start. If he still dared to underestimate her now, he would be digging his own grave. While Bailey Hongzhuang was pursuing her victory, the 3 beasts were lazily watching Yu Hushi in front of them. Xiao He glanced at Yu Hushi lazily, then turned to Bai Shi and said, Bai Shi, you should be able to deal with this kind of trash in a matter of minutes, right? Bai Shi nodded, his expression filled with disdain. It's a piece of cake. In the next moment, the white lion's roar rang out. Roar! The roar of a beast king caused Yu Hushi's body to tremble uncontrollably. He prostrated himself on the ground as if he was worshipping the beast king. In front of the beast king, no matter how awe-inspiring he usually was, he could only bow his head in submission. He did not dare to even think of resisting. Bai Shi had no interest in teaching this fellow a lesson. He waved his hand, and Yu Hushi crawled off the stage, trembling. Clearly, he had lost the right to fight. Wang Yujing could not help but pay attention to the situation of his contracted beast during the battle. Currently, he was slightly inferior in comparison to Bailey Hongzhuang. If Yu Hushi's battle had ended, he would be able to lend him a helping hand. However, Wang Yujing's gaze swept across the stage. When he did not see Yu Hushi's figure, he could not help but be dumbfounded. Has Yu Hushi disappeared? That's impossible. After taking a closer look, he realized that Yu Hushi had already appeared below the fighting ring. He was prostrating himself on the ground, and his huge body was still trembling. No matter how he looked at it, it was very strange. Naturally, Wang Yujing knew that only Yu Hushi would behave like this when he encountered a demonic beast of a much higher level than him. However, none of Bailey Hongzhuang's 3 contracted beasts seemed to be able to do this. No matter how doubtful Wang Yujing was, it was obvious that he could not get an answer at this time. Bang! Bailey Hongzhuang's attack once again landed on Wang Yujing's body. At the same time, the 3 beasts also appeared behind Bailey Hongzhuang. After seeing this scene, Wang Yujing also knew that he was no match for Bailey Hongzhuang. Even though he was very unwilling, there was nothing he could do. In the end, Wang Yujing chose to admit defeat. After all, since the outcome of the battle had already been decided, it would be meaningless to fight to the death here. Moreover, he didn't know what kind of situation he would encounter after leaving the martial arts stage. It was better for him to preserve some of his strength. Young Palace Master Bailey is indeed powerful. I admit defeat. A dejected look appeared on Wang Yujing's face. He had actually lost to a level 3 Blue Realm cultivator. If this news were to spread, he would be humiliated. Bailey Hongzhuang cupped his fists. Young Palace Master Wang, thank you for letting me win. Just as the victor was about to be decided, Wang Yujing's identity card was handed to Bailey Hongzhuang by an invisible force in the next moment. Chapter 24:16. Without the identity card, Wang Yujing's figure almost disappeared in the next moment in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. At the same time, Bailey Hongzhuang returned to the light screen. However, the situation in front of her changed again. In Bailey Hongzhuang's line of sight, a brand new passage suddenly appeared, apparently guiding Bailey Hongzhuang to continue moving forward. It seems that it's leading me to my next opponent. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips slowly curved into a playful smile. The layout of this Shuolu battle was really interesting. However, she didn't know where Wang Yujing would go after she failed. Would she continue to walk in this path, or would she appear on the surface? Bailey Hongzhuang didn't know what the arrangement was, nor did she know when she would be able to meet up with the other cultivators in the team. She thought that they were going through the same battle. She could only hope that everyone would do well. This path was much shorter than the one Bailey Hongzhuang had taken before. After walking for about an hour, Bailey Hongzhuang saw another red light screen. However, the light screen was currently closed, and her next opponent had yet to arrive. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang sat down with her legs crossed and started a rest. Although she wasn't injured in the previous battle, she had used up some of her primary energy. After this battle, Bailey Hongzhuang understood that with her current strength, she should be able to deal with cultivators of Blue Realm level 5 to level 6. As for those of Blue Realm level 7, she would have to give it her all if she wanted to win. The final result was uncertain. However, Bailey Hongzhuang had always thought that since she was already here, she might as well take things as they came. He would go as far as he could go. He did not have to go all the way to the last step. At least, she was sure that she was in the middle among the heirs. She wouldn't be at the bottom. What happened next was just as Bailey Hongzhuang expected. After resting for a day, her opponent appeared again. After she won again and received an identity badge, she walked into a new path and began her next journey. As the number of battles increased, Bailey Hongzhuang realized that her opponent's strength was increasing. At first, Wang Yujing was the weakest. As her opponent's strength increased, Bailey Hongzhuang's battle became more and more difficult. Every heir had their own powerful trump card. Bailey Hongzhuang had also seen many powerful moves in the process of fighting, and her trump cards were also constantly displayed. The 3 beasts also helped Bailey Hongzhuang a lot. Her opponent's contract beasts were often defeated by White Lion. Xiao He and Xiao Bai were responsible for creating a diversion so that her opponent wouldn't be able to guard. Under such circumstances, Bailey Hongzhuang could be said to have defeated all her opponents. Comparing notes with the strong, Bailey Hongzhuang had also gained a lot. As her potential was stimulated again and again, Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation level directly broke through to level 4 of Blue Realm. Bailey Hongzhuang was already struggling with her strength at level 3 of Blue Realm. However, after her breakthrough and the increase in her combat power, she continued to hold on. Chapter 24:17. After obtaining 10 identity badges in this battle, Bailey Hongzhuang had many wounds on her body. The opponents she encountered were getting stronger and stronger. She had to give her all in every battle, so naturally, her injuries were piled on top of her injuries. However, throughout this process, her coordination with the three beasts had also improved. Fortunately, as a cultivator's power increases, the amount of time they could rest in between battles would also increase. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the identity badges she had obtained. She had obtained a total of 10 identity badges in this battle. In addition to the 2 identity badges she had obtained previously, she now had a total of 12 identity badges. She believed that her gains were considered to be rather good. She was aware of her own limitations in the following battles and knew that her chances of winning were very slim. This was because she had already given her all in the 10th battle and had won by a narrow margin. The opponent in the next round would definitely be much stronger than the previous one. It was almost impossible for her to win by luck. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did not intend to admit defeat without a fight, so she intended to give her all in this battle. As for how far she could go, it would depend on her own luck. Anyway, this battle would not take anyone's life. She would take it as a chance for her to learn from each other and understand her opponent's power. Master, the door of the light screen has opened. While Bailey Hongzhuang was cultivating, the three beasts noticed the ripples in the door of the light screen and could not help but remind her. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang exited her cultivation state. She looked at the flickering door of the light screen and composed herself. We'll come. Let's go in. The three beasts nodded and immediately followed Bailey Hongzhuang into the light screen. However, when Bailey Hongzhuang saw the person who had walked out of the light screen, she was completely stunned. Then, a surprised and excited smile appeared on her devastatingly beautiful face. She never thought that she would meet someone whom she had not met outside in this battle arena. When Di Beichun saw Bailey Hongzhuang, his handsome face was filled with joy as well. Wife, I haven't seen you in so long. I've missed you so much. Di Beichun's lips curved into a devilish smile. His long and narrow eyes slightly raised, revealing a bit of teasing and love. Upon closer inspection, one could see the seriousness in his eyes. Since Bailey Hongzhuang left the assessment competition and stayed in Tiangang's sect to cultivate, Di Beichun had been accompanying Bailey Hongzhuang all the time. They had not been separated for such a long time. Hearing Di Beichun's cynical words, Bailey Hongzhuang wrinkled her nose and glanced at Di Beichun, but her eyes were shining with a bright smile. You've been talking nonsense ever since you arrived. Di Beichun chuckled and walked slowly to Bailey Hongzhuang. Isn't that because my wife is too beautiful? Bailey Hongzhuang's cheeks flushed red. Faced with Di Beichun's praise, she was shy and did not know what to say. I'm not going to talk nonsense with you. This guy was always able to say these words like a gentleman. She was completely convinced. Di Beichun reached out and pulled Bailey Hongzhuang into his arms. Wife, tell me, have you missed your husband during this time? Bailey Hongzhuang pouted and pretended to be disdainful. I'm too lazy to miss you. Are you telling the truth? Di Beichun stared at Bailey Hongzhuang's limpid eyes. You really didn't miss me? Chapter 24:18. When she said this, Bailey Hongzhuang turned her eyes away with a guilty conscience. Ever since the Battle of the Deer, she had been hoping to meet up with Di Beichun as soon as possible. Unfortunately, they had been arranged to be far away from each other, and she had never had the chance to meet up. For so long, Di Beichun had been by her side every day, and she had long gotten used to it. Now that they had been apart for such a long time, she really felt that something was missing. However, she did not want to admit it at a time like this. Otherwise, Bachin would be even more pleased with himself. My wife, you don't miss me? Bachin frowned and pretended to be displeased. You should be punished. Before Bailey Hongzhuang could react to Bachin's sudden words, Bachin's kiss had already landed on her lips. He tossed and turned, indulging in her sweetness. As if to punish Bailey Hongzhuang for her dishonesty, Bachin's kiss was less gentle and more domineering and punishing. He kissed her fiercely. He had missed the person in front of him so much these past few days, and this little one actually dared to not miss him. This would not do. Bailey Hongzhuang pushed her hands against Bachin's chest, but realized that it was useless. That was because the man's hands were too strong, and she had no way of resisting. She could only endure everything with a red face. The three beasts, who had been prepared to go all out, had already covered their eyes with their paws. However, they still peeked through the gaps. Bachin is really too much. He always catches me off guard like this. I'm going to grow a needle's eye. Little Black covered its eyes and stomped its feet. Its white fur had now turned completely pink. It was bright red. Then why are you still peeking? Xiaobai glanced at Xiaohe. Every time, Xiaohe would mutter to herself while sneaking glances at her. Look at how popular you are now. Upon hearing this, Xiaohe glared at Xiaobai. How are you any better than me? You're not usually so dark. How dare you say you're not popular? Both of you are the same. White Lion glanced at the two of them. Be quiet, or Master will find out. After Bachin let go of Bailey Hongzhuang, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but gasp for air. At the same time, she looked at the person who was laughing in front of her with shame and indignation. Bachin. Good girl. Bachin blinked. Facing the embarrassed Bailey Hongzhuang, he felt even more tender affection for her. Bailey Hongzhuang was completely speechless. This fellow's skin was indeed as thick as the city walls. The moment she turned around, Bailey Hongzhuang saw Xiaohe, who had turned completely pink. The shame and indignation in her heart grew even stronger. Where was her prestige as the master of this place? Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang turn around, the three beasties were so scared that they quivered. They quickly turned around and lowered their heads, facing the wall to reflect on themselves. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at this scene speechlessly. She was also helpless towards these three beasts. Bachin lowered his voice and chuckled softly. He pulled Bailey Hongzhuang's small hand and pulled her into his embrace. My wife, have you encountered any danger since the deer-chasing battle? These days, he had been worried about Bailey Hongzhuang's situation. Now that he saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was safe and sound, he could finally relax. Fortunately, I've managed to avert danger. That you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.